It's absolutely all about race and nothing to do. Nothing to do with qualifications. What's up, Jeff? This is just another one of those streams I started to listen to some of these jackasses. President Biden chose her because she's black, she has a badge, and she's a leftist who will uphold any of his bullshit decisions. Yeah, it's all about her color. Oh, my racisms. Oh, yeah, she went completely light on fucking people who were raping 8-year-olds and fucking child porn cases. And then you got people like this fucking talking about her that are just, damn, it's all about race. It fucking makes me sick. Cat, I wouldn't be anywhere near me during watching shit like this. I might get pissed and throw you. I'm just saying. I can't touch guns during this, but I can throw cats. There's other testimony going on right now. I just had to back up and listen to this chick again. Cat, you're a crackhead. You know that? Still wondering where you keep your crack pipe. Are you just trying to take my mind off this shit, Cat? All right, let me get back to live and let's see what these fucking dumbasses are talking about. Come here. What's up, Tactical? Hopefully, you got something for a headache already. We're watching this confirmation hearing. I figure since I got a little while to watch it, I might as well share the love with anybody who wants to join. But you fucking quit, cat. Oh, girl from the Congressional Black Caucus sitting next to him is just burning her ass all up. It's fucking funny. Oh man, yeah, this is it's freaking insane, man. We all know why Biden nominated her. We all know why she's going through this. She's black. She's a woman. She's a leftist. She's going to uphold every damn decision Joe Biden wants to make. That's the reason she's there. Yeah, she's. It's no wonder Democrats like her. You know, they all seem to have issues with kitty stuff. So anybody going light on the kitties offenders, they seem to really really like. Yeah. Okay. That's one way to put it. And of course, we're right back to race. Fuck me running. At any in any moment, would you idiots actually recognize that? I don't know. It sure the hell wasn't Democrats who opened the doors for people such as her. I got to get more coffee. It's too early in the day to switch to bourbon right now. Oh, yeah, you can.
Just wanted to take a moment and call somebody out now. My boy. Oh, my boy. For a long while now, I've been wanting to build a blue glowy Glock. Okay. And my boy, 2A 3D print, said, "You want to build yourself a blue glowy Glock?" Okay. First, he made a blue Kimlight backplate for my boy, Come Out in PLA. Now, if y'all know Come Out in PLA, you know Come Out in PLA does not PLA. Why? You know what I'm saying? So they made a backplate, blue Kimlight, all day, baby, all day. Okay. And then my man came on my live stream, because I don't know if y'all know, but we had a 2A 3D print come on the live stream, okay? And he came and he said, for my boy, Dark with DLD, I'm going to go ahead and do something special for him, okay? He said, I'm going to make that fool some blue glowy base plates for his blue glowy Glock. And I said, well, goddamn, 2A 3D print, thank you so much. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to make a motherfucking blue glowing Glock. And it's because of motherfuckers like you that I can do this type of shit. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. Now, it's funny because, oh, excuse me.
It's kind of cute.
It's funny because I was like, I want a blue glowy motherfucking Glock. And my man said, Kapow. Right? And then he said, Kapow.
Yeah. This is how I'm watching this dark.
Yet, Kapow. And then Kapow. And I was like, Kapow. Thank you. 2A 3D print. Now, what we're about to do, we are about to go live. Okay, y'all? And we're going to build ourselves a flat, dark, earthy Glock. Not a blue glow Glock. Different. Okay?
Hey, Crow, what's up?
But one of the things we're going to utilize is my man, 2A 3D prints, drill guides. Now, if you have not tried these motherfuckers.
Yeah, I put some rounds through that side folder AK I built yesterday, just fucking around.
These motherfuckers. No, for real. I know it's going to be hard looking through this lens, all right?
You know, that filter Dark's using on this Instagram post actually makes him look a little better.
I'm going to kill this live. Probably going to keep this bitch up just to embarrass my boy, 2A 3D print, but to thank him nonetheless.
That boy's a straight fool.
Hey, y'all.
I've got shit. Most of the parts to build an underfolder right now might be one of my next ones I build just because. Oh yeah, dude, I'd love to SBR. Well, Hey, fuck it. I've got a couple braced pistols, but I don't know whether I might SBR something later. Put it that way. Other than that, I'm just going to hang with my braced pistols. Messaging shooting gallery. Dude, that pre-brand Norenko right now is worth some freaking insane money. Of course, shit, man, all AKs right now are just freaking nuts. You're paying $450 at rock bottom for just a parts kit right now. Now, which GOA video? I normally catch their stuff as soon as it comes out, but I don't know which one you're talking about. Yeah, that Norenko selling it for 3,000 would be easy right now. Um, it's crazy what these prices have gone through in the last, I don't know, few years. I mean, hell, that side folder that I built. It was a Wasser 1063 thick stock is what it was. Um, and I just tore the gun completely down, uh, got a side folder receiver for it, and built everything back up. I just basically used it as a parts kit. But hell, I bought that Wasser in 18, and I think I paid about $650 for it, somewhere around there. It was like six and some change for it. So I mean, I got a good deal on the gun. Yeah, I saw a picture of that on John Crump Live yesterday. It's fucking hysterical. Man, the ATF is so freaking full of shit, man. And you've only got a handful of people in Congress that are actually trying to call the ATF out on this shit, and the rest of them are just fucking sitting on their hands. I mean, all the letters that I wrote to all these Congress critters, and pretty much every letter I got back in response was just a damn form letter. And then when I responded to their form letters, well, I didn't hear nothing back after that. Now, a lot of them I follow on Twitter and on Facebook, and just about every post they make, I post more shit about it. Um, like, what are you going to do about the ATF making millions of people felons overnight? I'd really like to know. You got somewhere like 40 million brace pistols out there, and their rule changes are going to make everybody who owns them felons, saying they're illegal SBRs right now. Well, yeah, man. I'm the way the ATF rulings are going right now. I probably have tons of suppressor parts in my house just because anything could be used to make a suppressor. It's freaking ridiculous. And anything having to do with a suppressor, one, they shouldn't even be able to regulate. It's not a damn firearm. If you can get a suppressor to fire a bullet without a gun attached to it, what are you going to do? Just stick a bullet or stick a round in it and then hit it with a hammer to set the primer off? Oh man, I did a couple of videos on my letters to Congress critters and the letters that I got back in response. Um, I don't think I did I don't think I did a video on the last one that I got, which was probably the biggest joke out of any letter that I got back. This whole thing is just damn ridiculous. Yeah, that's another person I do need to write as the Inspector General. I mean, I sent freaking letters out to all of my reps from Alabama, my state guys, sent them out to all my federal guys, hit up the governor, the attorney general of Alabama. Didn't get shit back from the governor or the attorney general. Um, Apparently, they don't give a flying rat's ass about the ATF making millions of people felons. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 140 years old. Damn. Oh my God. Hey, Tara, what's going on? Well, be careful out there, Tara. Don't let these little old four wheelers get in your way. Yes, because millions of women do that every single day. women like this are an absolute leftist nightmare. How dare someone tell women that they are powerful and strong and can actually, I don't know, be responsible for their own actions. Yeah, land's going up in Texas probably day to day because so many people are fleeing, um, trying to get out of areas like California. Which hell, land around me's gone up quite a bit. I think when I bought that extra 5.5 acres down here, oh, I think it was like 1,200 an acre, somewhere around there. It's pretty much doubled since then, and that's only been, I don't know, 5 years ago. That's like yesterday when I went out and finally ran some rounds to that AK I built. I mean, I've just got to walk out to the backyard and just let it ride. And I'm telling you, that tree will never smart off to me again. $100K for that really ain't that bad, man. Uh, with the barndominium on it. Like shit, I've seen some of those barndominiums in the last little while that are absolutely slick. You know what? Did I ever set? No, I never did. I'm a jackass.
I was
I never
deeply
set it up where you guys
saddened
could
to
hear what I was
find
damn
out
listening to.
that Judge Jackson, while in private practice, advocated in favor of Massachusetts' previous buffer zone law in her amicus brief on behalf of abortion clinics. She and her colleagues maligned pro-life counselors, characterizing us
Tara.
in ugly and false ways. Her misrepresentations certainly don't describe me or any of the sidewalk counselors that I have worked with over the years. Indeed, the entire
I got to get a
reason I
bike one day. I've always
challenged
wanted
the
one,
buffer zone law
and
was
I've
because
got to get
I
one.
did not want to shout from a distance or come across as a woman with no compassion. Thankfully, in 2014, all 9 justices
I'm
of the
definitely
Supreme
not a
Court
crotch
ruled
rocket
that
kind of person either.
Massachusetts buffer zone did violate the First Amendment. When a woman is alone, sidewalk counselors walk with her in that moment. When a child is just minutes from losing his or her life, sidewalk counselors serve as their voice. The unborn have no voice. As Americans, we will disagree on many important issues, but that's the beauty of why our Constitution protects free speech and allows each of us to speak
not
truth
heavily populated out
with
here in the county,
love.
but I mean, there's
My
a decent
hope
amount
is
of people.
that this precious freedom,
Yeah, I've got
which
10 and a
preserves
half
our
acres,
nation
so
from tyranny
I ought to be able
and
to shoot wherever
violence,
the hell I
will
want, as long
remain
as I've got a good
respected
backstop.
and upheld. I would ask Judge Jackson that if she is confirmed to the Supreme Court, that she will choose to uphold all Americans' First
That's a good thing about
Amendment
living out in the county
freedoms.
instead of living under the city
And
jurisdiction.
I would like to end with a story. It just happened this week. I was home And the telephone rang. And the woman said, Eleanor? I said, yes. She said, oh, I'm so glad to talk with you. She said, I was just looking through my baby book of my little 3-month-old little girl. And underneath the picture of the baby was my card that I give out, Hope, Help, and Love. And she had pasted that in the album underneath the baby picture. There was my card and my number. And she called me and she said, I have to tell you. She said, Rose is now 18.
That's crazy.
She's graduating
Can't
from
even
high
shoot a
school.
pellet gun?
She's on her way to
Come on.
college. And I want to thank you for being there that day in January. And you talked to me. And I have to tell you, Rose is the joy of our life. So in conclusion,
as long as you got
might
a good
ask,
backstop and you're not
why
like
am
shooting
I so
into someone else's
passionate
damn
about
house,
supporting
you ought to be able
mothers
to fucking
and
break
free
it off whenever
speech?
you want.
Well, it's called love. And love,
But it ought to be
you can't
that simple.
argue with that. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. McCullough, for
I gotta
being
get
here
another
today.
cup of
We
coffee.
really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Our next witness is Mr. Richard Rosenthal.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for the distinct honor of appearing before you today. Just a few weeks from now, I will marry my beloved fiancée, Anna. And today I get to testify in support of the nomination of my lifelong friend, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, to be on the Supreme Court. So I feel especially blessed these days. And get well soon, Dad. I love you. Senators, I have known Ketanji Brown Jackson for nearly 38 years. We first met in 1984 as students in our public junior high school in Miami, Florida. I was 12 years old back then, and Ketanji was 14. We were friends back then right away, and now 38 years later, we still remain dear friends. From the very first day I met Ketanji, I knew she was special. In my entire life, I have never met anyone like her. In junior high, and then again at our large public high school, Ketanji was seemingly everywhere and everything. The president of the student body, the upbeat voice delivering the morning announcements over the school's public address system, the graduating senior voted most likely to succeed. And in our speech and debate program, she was literally the national champion in her event. Through it all, she was the one student who stood out as universally loved and admired by everyone, her fellow students, teachers, and administrators alike. Ketanji's incandescent brilliance was obvious to all of us from day one. But even more importantly, she has always been one of the kindest, warmest, most humble, and down-to-earth people I have ever met. All this while still possessing boundless charisma, drive, maturity, and grace. For all these remarkable characteristics to somehow reside in the same one person, well, I suppose you can understand why everyone who knows Ketanji believed she was destined for greatness. I could go on describing Ketanji's amazing qualities, but instead, let me relate two stories from our high school days. First, Ketanji wasn't just a supernova national champion from our debate squad, though of course she was. She was also the unofficial leader of our tight-knit debate family, acting basically as a student coach and mentor for all the younger students. Outside in the grassy area between the school's hallways, we would sit cross-legged on the ground, all of us in rapt attention, while Ketanji would stand and explain to us the keys to success, in particular, the need for preparation, poise, discipline, and above all, hard work. She was a born leader. No matter how high she would climb, she always threw ladders down to the rest of us and encouraged us and helped us on our upward climb to the best of our abilities. In 1998, for just a few weeks, Ketanji's path and my path overlapped again as we both served as law clerks for judges on the same court, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. She was finishing up her one-year appellate clerkship and I was just beginning mine. For those few weeks, I confess that I felt a surge of excitement and satisfaction because I had actually accomplished something that Ketanji had accomplished. But for her part, Ketanji has never been about comparing herself to anybody else's accomplishments. She simply sets her own goals and then works tirelessly to achieve them. In the nearly 40 years that I've known Ketanji, I can't remember ever hearing her say an unkind word to anybody, or even an unkind word about anybody. That's just not her nature. And it's not how her amazing parents, Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown, raised her. That leads me to my second story about high school. It was the fall of 1987. I was a sophomore and Ketanji was a senior. In our Latin American history class, I sat in the seat next to hers, but on this particular day, her chair was empty. But just then, the school principal came on the PA system and announced that a handful of our senior class had been accepted to Harvard College that day, a huge achievement for our large and often underfunded public high school. As fate would have it, at that very moment that the principal announced Ketanji's name, Ketanji happened to open the door and walk in the classroom. The entire classroom immediately leapt to its feet, exploded in applause, and ran over to Ketanji to embrace her. It was one of the most genuine, heartwarming moments I have ever seen. Every student was so happy for Ketanji and so proud of her accomplishment. Nobody was jealous, nobody was resentful, and nobody was at all surprised because she was Ketanji. And now, some 4 decades later, the President of the United States has nominated Ketanji to be a Supreme Court Justice. It seems fitting. After all, this is what great Americans are supposed to do. They're supposed to achieve great things. And Ketanji Brown Jackson is a great American. Personally, I feel blessed to have been born in a country that can produce such an extraordinary person. My parents of blessed memory were Jews who escaped persecution in Nazi Germany. And they, along with my dear parents, always reiterated to me and my siblings what an amazing country this is, because in America, anybody can succeed, no matter who they are, what they look like, or where they come from. My grandparents and my parents were
Damn,
right.
Tara.
In America,
I bet you
a
that
great
made a
person like the
mess.
Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson can indeed succeed and can ascend to positions of great trust and great responsibility. Members of the Senate, by confirming
My
this
uncle was a
extraordinary
driver
woman
for
to a seat on the Supreme
damn
Court, you
long
will
time
honor
for JB
everything
Hunt.
that is
And my
good
dad
and
drove
right
for
about
JB
America,
Hunt for a long
for
time.
the good of our country, and for the good
Oh,
in
my
our
uncle
country.
told me there was,
I
I
hope
can't
that you
remember where
will.
it was, somewhere up
Thank you.
north.
Thank you,
He
Mr.
said,
Rosenthal. Ms. Keisha
I can't
Russell.
remember what the driver was hauling, but he was driving a
Good
hood.
morning, and thank you for the
And,
opportunity to testify.
There was a moose
I'm a
in the road. And he
constitutional
fucked
lawyer
around
at
and
First
honked his
Liberty
horn at a
Institute.
moose. And
First
the
Liberty is
moose
a national
proceeded
legal
to tear the
organization
front
with a
end of his
mission
truck
to
all to
defend and
pieces.
restore religious liberty for all Americans. In addition to being a lawyer, I'm also the daughter of Jamaican-born parents, and I'm a former elementary school teacher in Atlanta Public Schools. I'm here to explain how critical race theory may impact a judge's judicial philosophy, including the fulfillment of her oath to uphold the Constitution, as well as to remain impartial and uphold the integrity and independence of the
That's the only thing
judiciary.
that should matter
Critical race
for any
theory,
of
or
these
CRT, is a
judges
subset of
are you
critical
going to
theory
uphold the
that began with Immanuel
Constitution
Kant
as it is
in
written?
the 1790s.
That's the only thing
Critical
that should
theory
matter.
rejected the principles of the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason on which the American Republic
But
was
instead, we
founded.
get this
Critical
BS
theory teaches
where
that all human relationships are relationships of power between the oppressors and
Biden's
the
nominating
oppressed.
a judge,
The
one that's
oppressor
going to uphold
oppressed
any
lens of
decision that
critical
he
theory
makes.
helped establish
They're going to
totalitarian
uphold
ideologies
abortion, even though
such as
abortion's not
Marxism
even
and
mentioned in the
Nazism.
Constitution.
CRT's key assertion
They're
is that
going to try
racism
to
is not the
uphold
result of
anything
individual
having to
conscious
do
prejudices,
with
actions, or thoughts, but
restrictions on
rather that
firearms,
racism
even though
is a systemic and
the
structural
Constitution
force.
gives the government
CRT teaches
zero
that racism is
rights
embedded in America's legal systems,
to
institutions, and
manage
capitalist
firearms.
economy, and it demands whiteness as a societal norm.
I
I will
mean,
address 3 of CRT's erroneous assumptions
that's why
and
they use the
the possible
interstate
impact
commerce
on
clause
judicial
to actually
philosophy.
put through all their
Number
damn
1,
gun
believing
laws.
that America was founded on racist ideals is wrong and incompatible with a judge's oath to uphold the Constitution. CRT proponents claim that America was founded and the Constitution was drafted to promote racism and slavery. Historians have debunked this claim as false. The truth is that America's founders were divided on this issue of slavery, and many of the founders were abolitionists. America's core ideals of freedom and equality, expressed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, sparked the movements that led to the eventual elimination of both slavery and Jim Crow. CRT is sometimes erroneously analogized to the civil rights movement, and some CRT proponents even assert that Dr. King was a critical race theorist, but he was not. Now, King would argue that Bull Connor, the head of the Birmingham, Alabama police, and the Southern racists were violating the principles of the American founding. But critical race theory would argue the opposite, that Connor was the fulfillment of the American founding, because America was founded to perpetuate this white supremacy. Ultimately, we cannot expect someone who subscribes to critical race theory to defend and protect the Constitution. because CRT asserts that the Constitution is not worth defending. Such a view completely contradicts the oath every judge takes. Number two, a judge who embraces critical race theory perspective that America must address racism by encouraging racism cannot be an impartial judge. Contrary to CRT's assertion that racism is socially created, racism is the result of individual feelings of superiority and prejudice. There's no doubt that bad laws will further erase a society, but such racism must first be alive in the individual before it can become alive in society. Ultimately, when unaddressed prejudice gets married to power, there is going to be an unintended pregnancy, which will give birth to the evil of racism. Since personal prejudices advance a racist society, we cannot address racism by encouraging racist behaviors. Mr. Kendi, one of CRT's advocates, brazenly declares that the only remedy to prevent discrimination is future discrimination. In essence, CRT proposes that the oppressed group must be granted advantages in society to the detriment of the oppressor group in order to address past injustices.
You know,
Adherence
this
to
chick keeps
CRT
talking,
removes the
she's going to
principle of
be called
equality
another black
before the
face of
law that
white
is necessary for just
supremacy, like Candace
decision
Owens
making.
or
Consider,
Thomas
for example,
Sowell or
how
Larry
CRT
Elder.
philosophy could influence a judge's view in criminal sentencing. If a judge believes that the only way to correct racism is to provide advantages to blacks and disadvantages to whites, this would create dire injustices in that judge's practices. A judge who embraces CRT's views may engage in favoritism and partiality, contrary to the judicial canons. Number three, a judge must uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary, and she cannot do so if she considers systemic racism in her decision-making. While racism is alive in the hearts of many people in our country, it does not determine the outcome of any minority's educational, professional, or economic accomplishments. My own testimony is a reflection of this truth, as I am a first-generation American and the daughter of Jamaican-born parents.
And honestly,
And despite the fact that my parents came
in
to
the
this
United
country
States right now,
to build a life for
comparatively,
themselves from the
you
ground
couldn't
up,
find
my
enough
parents still raised
actual
many
white
successful
supremacist
children.
racists to
CRT
fill up
does
a
not
fucking
acknowledge that
Waffle
regardless of
House.
the struggles that people face in life, we are all individually responsible for the lives we live and the success we attain. Instead, CRT makes race the
But it's the kind
predominant
of thing that the
relevant factor.
Democrats have been pushing for
Every
a while.
lawyer and judge promises to defend and
Yeah, that's
protect the
part
U.S.
of what they're using to
Constitution.
push this
She cannot uphold
crap
this
about
oath if she believes that the
80% frames
Constitution and the
received.
principles of America's founding
Trying
are
to say that
inherently
they are the
racist and
choice
inherently
of white
flawed.
supremacists.
Neither can a
and
judge
shit.
remain impartial and administer judges independently if she holds a philosophy that correcting racism requires affording privileged classes less justice than oppressed classes. Ultimately, a judge should consider America's history as a lesson and a blueprint for why and how we must constantly seek to uphold and protect America's founding promises. For these reasons, First Liberty opposes the nomination. And I thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
And just the
Thank
fact
you,
that
Ms.
this
Russell.
freaking
And next
judge
is
is so
Captain
weak
Frederick
on sentencing
Thomas.
child molesters.
Good morning,
ought to
Committee Chairman,
disqualify
Senator
them.
Richard J. Durbin, and Ranking Member Senator Charles E. Grassley,
Not to mention
and
the
members
fact
of the
that
U.S.
her
Senate
decisions,
Committee
her
on the Judiciary. I bring you
decisions
greetings on
have been
behalf of the Executive
overturned
Board,
so many
members,
times.
and constituents of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NOBLE. My name is Frederick L. Thomas, and I am the National President of NOBLE and current captain for the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff Office in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I have served more than 30 years in law enforcement profession and 26 years in the Louisiana Army National Guard. I am a U.S. military combat veteran who served in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. The organization I represent is NOBLE, and the mission is to ensure equity in the administration of justice and the provision of public service to all communities,
Noble's
and to
full
serve
of
as the
shit.
conscience of law enforcement by being committed to justice by action. NOBLE has approximately 50 chapters and represent over 3,400 members worldwide. that
Why the
consists
hell
of
is
chief
it like the Black Caucus
executive officer and command
is
level
called the
law
conscience
enforcement
of the
officials from
Congress?
federal,
Now
state,
Noble is the
country,
conscience of law enforcement.
county, municipal law enforcement
Are they
agencies,
saying
and criminal
that
justice practitioners.
any race other than
It is
black
an honor
people
for NOBLE to provide written
doesn't have a
testimony on the
conscience?
nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson to be Associate Justice of Supreme Court of the United States. We endorse President Joe Biden's nomination of the Federal Appeals Court, Judge
Of
Ketanji Brown
course you do.
Jackson,
You're the type of
serve
motherfucker that
on the
would
U.S.
arrest someone
Supreme
for
Court.
not wearing a mask.
A graduate of
Um,
Harvard Law School, Judge
yeah.
Jackson brings a long and impressive resume, including her background
So
in
thank you
public
for your
service,
service.
experience
You're a
as a
moron.
federal public defender, and a federal judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Throughout her career, Judge Jackson has demonstrated deep knowledge and respect for law, balanced judgment, and unwavering commitment to justice. She is intimately
How is a
qualified to
woman
serve on the
who,
highest court in the
when a
land.
prosecutor recommends
Noble
that someone
joins the
serves
International
like
Association of
3
Chiefs
years
of
in
Police,
prison for kitty
Fraternal Order
porn,
of Police,
which
the more
I
than
believe
60
they should have
top law
recommended a
enforcement
lot
leaders
more than that.
and
But
former
this judge turns
Republicans
around and gives the guy
and
3
Democrat attorney
months,
generals
or was it
endorsing
2 months?
Judge
2 or 3
Jackson.
months is
She
what
has
she
a unique
sentenced this guy
perspective
to.
on the needs of law enforcement
And then he
through
gets out,
the association
he's
of her
on
family
probation,
members in the profession.
and he
Judge
offends
Jackson had
again,
two
and then
uncles
she's lied on
who were
him
career
again.
law enforcement officers. One was the detective
Um,
for the Miami-Dade County, and the other rose
Just
to the
my
rank to
humble
become chief of
opinion,
police for Miami Police Department.
if you are doing shit
In addition, her brother
with
served as
child
an undercover
porn,
officer at a drug sting unit in Baltimore after graduating from college.
or you are doing shit
It
to
is our
actually
opinion that
harm
a
children,
direct familiarization with the
physically,
complexity, challenges, and opportunity within law enforcement provides perspective on
you
criminal
shouldn't
justice
be out on
issues
the
that
street.
can be
That is
assessed
an
to
incurable
the Supreme
condition.
Court.
Um,
In evaluating her judicial track record,
you
it is
should
the
be
opinion
in
of
a
Noble and
place
other
to
law enforcement
where you will
organizations
never get
that
near
Judge Brown
a
had
computer or a
constantly
child again.
adjudicated based on the facts
Ever.
and applied the law fairly. Ketanji Brown
Preferably
Jackson had
with
been
about
previously
6 foot of
vetted
dirt over
twice
the top of
by
it.
the Judiciary Committee and twice confirmed by the full Senate as a judge, garnering bipartisan support as recently as 2021. She was also confirmed in
Yeah,
2010
and
as vice chair of the U.S.
she's
Sentencing
a
Commission.
mother. She has
It is noble
children.
hope that Ketanji Brown Jackson
You would
will
think
receive the
that
bipartisan
she would be a
support
little
for
bit
the most
more
prestigious nomination
stern
to the
with
nation's
people
highest
with
court.
child porn or
In
people
closing,
that have actually raped
This is a
children.
watershed moment in our nation's history. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is a stellar nominee with extraordinary background. She is clearly qualified and possesses the knowledge, legal
Much
acumen,
like with a
and
lot of
experience to
other
serve on the United States Supreme Court.
criminals that
Noble
are
is
never
honored
going
to endorse a
abide
nominee of this
by
stature who is
laws.
confirmed to participate in
Child
deciding biblical
molesters are
legal
people
cases
that are never going to
impacting the lives of all
stop
people
doing
across this mosaic
their crimes.
of our country.
They should
We
never see
encourage
the
this
light of
esteemed
fucking
body
day
to send her
as a
nomination to
free
the Senate
person.
floor. I thank you, Chairman Durbin, for the invitation to appear today.
It's no
and the
wonder the
committee
left
members for your
likes this
kind attention. Thank you.
judge with their propensity for
Thank you, President
touching
Thomas.
kitties.
Our last witness is Ms.
Or-
Serrano, who I believe is going to join us by
Our former
virtual
vice president,
WebEx.
Sniffy.
Let's hope that it's connected.
Well,
Ms. Serrano?
Good morning, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and members of the
and what
committee.
kills me is they talk
Nelson
about
Mandela
this
once
chick,
said, "There can be no keener revelation of a
but
society's
the
soul than the
Democrats
way it treats its
filibuster
children.
every
The people who sexually
freaking,
exploit and abuse children must be held accountable, not only to
judge
society,
that the
but to their
Republicans put
victims.
through that
Incarceration and sex
was
offender
black
registration
and
are ways
conservative.
to hold these criminals accountable and
Um,
responsible for their despicable acts.
and call
Child
them everything but a
pornography
child
or
of God.
Child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, is a
Now
horrific
they're calling
crime that plagues
Republicans
victims
racist
long
because
after the initial
they are just
sexual
questioning
abuse.
this
My name
chick's
is Alessandra
judicial
Curtis Serrano.
philosophy.
I work for Operation Underground Railroad, a nonprofit organization that partners with governments here and around the world to help victims of human trafficking and child exploitation get the necessary aftercare and support they so desperately need. Operation Underground Railroad also helps train foreign law enforcement and other entities who may have contact with potential victims on how to identify, investigate, and prosecute traffickers and exploiters of
Let me go
children.
check on something.
I recently joined this organization in December of 2021. For the preceding 18 plus years, I served as a federal prosecutor for the U.S. Department of Justice. During my DOJ career, I personally handled hundreds of child exploitation and human trafficking cases involving thousands of victims. I saw firsthand not only what these victims endured from the initial abuse, but also the continued abuse and exploitation for years to come, oftentimes for the remainder of their lives. The Supreme Court in the Paroline case recognized this fact when it allowed victims depicted in CSAM material to obtain mandatory restitution from voyeurs, distributors, and transporters of CSAM long after the initial sexual abuse has occurred. While the initial sexual abuse causes great harm from which victims may never overcome, CSAM re-traumatizes victims for years after their abuse. Every time a person views CSAM, that child is re-exploited, re-traumatized, and re-abused. When an offender is caught viewing downloading or distributing
Twitter,
that yet
Facebook,
another offender
they can
views
remove
CSAM.
every bit of
Upon
gun
receiving these
content, but
notices,
can't get
victims
rid of
are
child
forced to
porn.
relive the crime. Persons who download, view, and distribute CSAM cause an increase in the production of CSAM images.
Makes sense
No one
to
wants
me.
to see reruns of TV or movies. We've all experienced this during COVID when the release of new movies and TV shows stopped. And that includes voyeurs and distributors of CSAM. With this appetite for new material comes the increased demand for the abuse of younger kids in more violent, sadistic, and masochistic images. According to recent statistics, I personally prosecuted cases with images of abuse and exploitation of children as young as premature infants. This trend by certain judges to routinely decrease sentences far below the advisory sentencing guidelines and prosecutors'
the only
recommendations
reason that they
for
should
CSAM
go
consumers
light on a sentence
minimizes
for a
the
child
gravity of the
molester
offense.
is
While the
to
amount
allow
of material
the
being
father
produced
or
and the number
mother
of people
time
consuming this
to
material has increased
develop a
exponentially
plan to
over recent years.
plant
The
that
sentences have decreased. This makes
piece of
no
shit.
sense. I live in Southern California, where destructive wildfires are a yearly issue. The fires leave hundreds of victims in its wake. When the fires spread and get bigger, do we put fewer firefighters on the front line? Use less water or resources? Fewer containment measures? No, of course not. That scenario is akin to routinely reducing sentences for CSAM consumers when the supply is undisputedly increasing. I say again, it makes no sense. I hope all of the members of this committee agree that there is no cause more noble than protecting our children. Whether some crimes warrant longer prison sentences is a debate left for another day. However, purveyors of CSAM, especially those with prior conduct involving sexual abuse or exploitation, deserve to be taken out of society for a substantial period of time and to be identified by the public through sex offender registries. It has been my experience that offenders are only remorseful because they get caught and not because of what their deviant and destructive conduct has done to countless victims, many of whom are unidentified. Lastly, the notion that CSAM crimes only involves pictures is appalling to most prosecutors and victim advocates. CSAM depicts real children who deserve justice. These victims or survivors deserve our respect and dignity for what they endured. They do not deserve to be treated with less consideration than offenders who take sexual pleasure in viewing CSAM of what is the darkest days of their lives. Our society is better than that. At least I hope it is. Our most precious resource, our children, deserve it. On behalf of victims of CSAM and other sexual exploitation, I thank you for the committee's time and attention to this important matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Serrano. We're now going to have rounds of questions. There are 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and I hope the members will hold to that standard. I'll begin. And let me start with Captain Thomas. Thanks. Thanks for coming here. Thanks for more than 30 years of service in law enforcement. Thanks for more than 26 years of military service, including combat duty. It's an honor to have you as a panelist here, as it is with all of our panelists, but certainly I wanted to commend you for those things.
Thank you, sir.
You're probably aware of the fact that Judge Jackson has received the unqualified endorsement, not only of your organization, Noble, but also of the Fraternal Order of Police and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, in addition to other law enforcement officials. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
So there have been charges made yesterday,
you're a
day
crackhead.
before,
You know that?
even this morning, that she is somehow part of a, quote, anti-incarceration, anti-police movement, that somehow she is affiliated with a defund the police movement. Would you or your organization have endorsed her if that were true?
Sir, that would never happen if we knew that she'd have made a statement like that.
Dude,
We never saw
you
that
know
in our
good and damn well
research.
the
That
only
never came
reason
out.
You're endorsing her is because
And I
you're
don't
a
really think it's
Democrat
true,
and
sir.
she's a black
I don't
woman.
either.
That's
And
the
I
only
would
reason.
assume the same thing is the
So you
case
could go
for the
burn
Fraternal
your
Order
police
of
department
Police,
down and you'd
the
still do it.
largest organization representing rank and file policemen in America, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, respected at their own level for the leadership they bring to law enforcement. So that is a charge which I think is belied by the fact that this endorsement has taken
Yeah.
place.
Yes, sir.
Wade Henderson, you were in the audience. Welcome back. You were in the audience and heard the earlier testimony from the American Bar Association.
Yeah, dude, he's another cop.
2 or 3, maybe
that
4 members have really
seriously
dwelled
would
on
arrest
this whole
somebody for
question of
not wearing a
sentencing
mask.
in
And I'll
child
guarantee you he was one that was
pornography
confiscating
cases and
guns
child
when
abuse cases.
Katrina hit.
And I asked the 3 representatives
It's
of the
one of the
American
reasons
Bar
not
Association
necessarily
if
just
they had
because of the
made
hurricane, but I was
inquiry
glad I was
among
out
the
of St. Tammany
professionals,
Parish.
prosecutors, defense
when
lawyers,
Katrina hit.
judges
I mean, we had done
who
moved
have
to Georgia
witnessed
by then.
Judge Jackson's role
But
in criminal justice, particularly in this particular
it
area of
goes
the
to
law.
show you where
And they
law
testified
enforcement,
that they had consulted with
at least
250
the upper
professionals
echelon of law
to
enforcement,
reach
your
their
political
conclusion of giving her a
officers,
unanimously
it goes to show you where they
well-qualified
stand.
rating. And I asked them during the course of this, since we spent so much time here with 3 or 4 members dwelling on that issue, whether they found any evidence to back up the charges that were being leveled at this committee level, and their answer was no. No evidence, not at all.
Dude, you're
You
full
would
of
think
shit.
that one person out of 250 would have found the same conclusions
It's
as 3 or
the
4 of my
same damn
colleagues
reason
did
when
in the
they
last
asked
several
for
days.
the notes of the
What is your
interviews,
conclusion from
so-called
that?
in support of this chick.
Mr. Chairman, your questions
They wouldn't
to the
give that
American Bar
information up.
Association representatives, in my view, were dispositive of this issue of whether Judge Jackson in some way was outside of the legal mainstream of other jurists or somehow tolerated the abuse of children implicitly by the questions that were posed. I thought their responses this morning were completely dispositive. I began when I saw the testimony yesterday thinking that unfortunately this hearing has devolved in some ways to a partisan attack on an otherwise extraordinarily well-qualified nominee.
Off.
By any standard, Judge Jackson's
Anybody
record,
who
both
believes
on
these
and off
idiots
the
just
bench, her
needs to
academic
go-
achievements are unparalleled with almost anyone who has been appointed to the Supreme Court. A failure to find her vulnerable on the basis of qualification has somehow led to a series of questions focused
because
on
how
7
dare someone
decisions that
actually
she
ask
rendered
her
in
about
sentencing
her
that, in my
judicial
view,
record
bordered on the
when
demagogic.
she's going
I
to
think
go to
when
the
one takes a
Supreme
look at the
Court.
repeated effort
And
to
these same
pose
idiots were
questions about
completely okay
her
with
record somehow
the
being
attacks
outside
on
the mainstream,
Kavanaugh or Amy
indeed
Coney
reinforced
Barrett.
that view. Ultimately, I think the issue, as Senator Whitehouse mentioned, was both asked and answered, and that the judge had clearly demonstrated that she was well within the mainstream of
Look at
judicial
that chick
thinking.
sitting next to him.
Finally,
She's
I
looking at him
felt
like,
that the
dude,
criticism of some
that bullshit's
directed at
getting
her
awful
for her
deep.
decision-making was misplaced. To the extent that her decisions, at least to those who questioned her, were somehow at variance with what the law was. They could have said that. No one did. But they could also recognize that it is up to Congress to establish the standards that judges apply in their decision-making responsibility. To the extent that there were questions posed about her, better to look
Hey,
inward
G23,
at
what's
the
up,
role
brother?
that Congress played in establishing the role that judges fulfilled in this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Senator Grassley.
Ms. Mascott, we heard several times from Judge Jackson that her judicial philosophy is in her 500 cases or whatever number that we have from her district court work. So that
And all
was
they've
her
done is
answer to the
actually
questions about
question
what's your
her
judicial
decisions.
philosophy. How important is the
But somehow you're
justice's
not
judicial
supposed to do
philosophy
that.
in determining how they will rule on the bench?
Sure, Senator. Well, I think as these hearings and numerous Supreme Court nomination proceedings previously have indicated, is judicial philosophy is obviously paramount because in contrast to the political branches, this body and the presidency, judges have a limited role to decide cases and controversies. And as Mr. Henderson is saying, Congress has a large role in establishing what the role and the jurisdiction of courts are going to be and the procedures they're going to put into place. And so a judge's approach and
thing is
philosophy
she
in
had
interpreting both the
sentencing
Constitution
guidelines.
and statutory text is
And she
critical.
was always on the
And
low end
in
of
the
those
past, I
sentencing
think nominees
guidelines
that
when
have
it
gone on
came
to serve on the
to
Supreme Court and be
child
committed
porn
and
or child
consistent and
molester. She was
exclusive
always
in
on the
their
low end of
adoption of
that scale.
originalism and textualism have
Um,
clearly
that doesn't give me
discussed
the
those
warm and
methodologies, those
fuzzies about this
philosophies,
chick
expressed
actually
commitment to them before this body, and articulated their grounding in the
sentencing people
Constitution.
to what they should be
I'm going
sentenced
to ask
to.
Ms. Serrano.
Which my opinion about child
You're
molesters
a
and
former
kiddie porn addicts is they ought to
assistant
be
U.S.
put in jail
attorney.
for the rest of
You're
freaking
familiar
lives.
with these crimes.
That's
where
the only way
children
to
are
solve that
victims.
issue because they are
Could you describe the sentencing
they have mental
enhancement
issues
around
and there's
child
no
pornography
solving said
cases
mental issues.
for use of computer, the number of images, pre-pubescent victims, but not so much on the mechanics of it, but explain why we have these enhancements?
It's my understanding that the enhancements were created to recognize the aggravation that the use of a computer or somebody with more images versus less images, or someone with images of very, very young children, they would deserve a higher sentence than somebody who was not had those characteristics.
I mean, they're pretty much trying to make it a sexual
Could you
orientation.
explain why possession of child pornography is not a victimless crime?
Yes, sir. So as I said in my testimony, these pictures or videos are real children. They're somebody's kid. They have parents, they have grandparents, they may have siblings. These are real children. And every time somebody views it, downloads it, possesses it, transports it, re-victimizes them. Can you imagine your most embarrassing moments on the internet forever? And this is not just embarrassing. This is brutal, sometimes often very violent, horrible conduct that victims know that somebody is out there looking at it.
Mr. Marshall, based upon your experience, which communities would be hurt most by anti-police movement? And is there anything in Judge Jackson's record specifically that concern you about
you are going to uphold the Constitution as it was written? That should be your only qualification.
Appreciate the question. As I raised in my opening statement, what gets lost when we describe the victims of crime is particularly where those victims are located. And those that advocate an anti-police and anti-incarceration statements are advocating directly against those that they claim to be able to speak for. When I hear that Justice Jackson would be a voice for the vulnerable,
they're gone.
Very rarely do I hear that being described to those victims of violent crime who truly are the innocent and most vulnerable of the system as a whole.
We're focusing on
My
this
broader
right
objection
now,
as it relates to what I've
people
seen
don't
in the record
realize that
is
the
when
Biden
there is a
administration
judicial
putting
opinion drafted
hundreds
by
of
the
judges
nominee
on lower
in which
courts
she
right
cites the New
that are
York
just as
Times
bad
for a
as this
quote
chick,
that
if
our
not
criminal
worse.
justice system is unfair and unjust. To me, that raises very specific questions about whether the nominee fully embraces whether or not our system is broken or whether or not she believes that the system works. Because to the extent that there continues to be the mindset that our system is unjust, then not only does it undermine the rule of law, but the ability of law enforcement to do their job and the public's confidence in the system in which we all hold dear.
Mr. Russell, mindful of the fact that Judge Jackson told us more than once that critical race theory never entered into her opinions
for anything
maybe
like
even matter of
child
discussion.
molestation,
If a judge or justice is making decisions
it ought to be
based
100%.
upon
Your ass
that
goes to
theory
jail.
and
Don't
those
pass
principles,
go. Don't
how
collect
might we
$200.
see that reflected in their opinions?
Hopefully you end up with a cellmate that is
Well,
going
thank
to
you for
treat
that
you
question.
like a fun
I think
boy,
that
for the rest of your
based
natural
on
born life.
my expertise in religious liberty and constitutional law, I think you always have to start with the original meaning of the Constitution and understand that regardless of the changing of the culture and what the social structure might call for, the standard never changes. And that ensures that there's an anchor and there's constantly a foundation to go back to. And so if you look at the Constitution through the lens of CRT, then you're going to assume that it's inherently flawed and incorrect, and you're less likely to view it as being something or a source that you need to go back to, or a source that should be relied upon, and certainly not in the original meeting, because the original meaning is going to be inherently discriminatory if you look at it through that lens. And so if you see it reflected in opinion, say in a religious liberty case, you might be inclined to say change that original meaning in order to reflect the current culture's new understanding of what religious liberty should mean.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you,
Oh,
Chairman.
here comes this dark money prick.
Ms. Russell, Ken Klakowski worked for First Liberty
I guarantee he
before
says
he went
something
to
about
the
dark
Department
money.
of Justice to become senior counsel to Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Clark and participate there in the drafting of a proposed letter in an effort to overturn the presidential election in Georgia. Did you personally, or did your organization have any role in helping to prepare or facilitate the preparation of that letter proposed by Jeffrey Clark?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall, you were the chairman of the Republican Attorney General's Association and the Rule of Law Defense Fund in the run-up to the January 6th assault on the Capitol. And Rule of Law Defense Fund sent robocalls urging recipients to march to the Capitol on January 6th. Were you personally present in Washington, D.C. on January 6th? Your microphone should probably come on.
I was not.
Did RAGA or RLDF have staff present here?
Can't speak to that, but Senator, what I can tell you is that we have denounced lawlessness. Not only is it related to what took place on January 6th, but also the lawlessness that continues to go on across our country with violent crime. And what I would hope is as part of this hearing, that this body is
Hopefully, G, you're
likewise
having a
questioning our
or a better
nominee
day at work than you
about
did the
her
other day,
philosophy
man.
on criminal justice as it relates to decisions she would make on the court.
Did you personally know of or approve the text of the robocall that went out from RLDF?
No.
Do you know how that robocall was funded? Was that out of general revenues of RLDF, or was a specific solicitation made to fund it?
No knowledge.
No knowledge? Did you personally solicit funding
why have you taken up with me
for that robocall?
Senator, I've made multiple comments here already. The question before this body is the nomination.
I get to
of
ask
Judge Jackson.
questions.
Yes, sir.
And my
what
question
I am
to
telling
you
you
is,
is
did
that
you
we have denounced
personally
what took place today as we do
money
continue to
White
denounce
House
for the
violence taking place
RLDF
across this country.
robocall that day? Pretty simple question. Yes or no, did you personally solicit money to support the robocall that brought people to the Capitol and who then assaulted the Capitol?
No.
Very well. Did you have any contact with members of Congress in any effort to keep
again?
the electoral process
I'm sorry.
open
Where does this fit into
through
this,
objections
Judge?
to give those coming to assault the Capitol time to breach the Capitol and disrupt the elections process?
No.
Jesus Christ, man.
Have you offered any testimony to the January 6th Commission?
Have not been asked.
You've not been asked. As you sit
The
here,
January 6th Commission.
you enjoy
is
the protection
so full
of
crap,
the
it's not even damn
Capitol
funny.
police officers who are here and who defended
And the
our
only
Capitol
people-
against the assault
What are you
on
doing,
January
Jeff?
6th by the crowd that your organization helped recruit.
You guys see this knothead?
Do you have anything to say to them, particularly to those who were injured in the line of duty on that day?
You know,
Sir, I object to the premise of your question that somehow or another the organization
cops
I was
didn't
connected with
provoke
had
a
anything
lot
to
of
do
those people
with the violence
by
that took
starting
place.
to pepper
We've denounced
spray
that
them.
violence
There
before, and as
probably
I've done
never
with
would
you
have
here
been
today.
the violence that there was on January 6th.
Joseph
And
R.
that
Biden
violence
of
was
Delaware, the
strictly
duly
in
elected
a
and
very
lawfully serving
small
president
group.
of the United States of America.
The rest of the
He is
people
the president
walking
of
through
this
the
country.
Capitol were
Is he
staying in
the
between
duly
the velvet
elected and
ropes
lawfully
and
serving
waving
president of the
flags.
United States?
He is the president of our country.
One of the funniest
Are you
ones was a guy
answering
standing in the rotunda
that?
smoking a joint.
Omitting the language
I watched
duly
live
elected
streams of that
and
whole
lawfully serving
freaking day.
purposefully?
I'm answering the question. He is the president of the United States.
And you have no view as to whether he was duly elected or is lawfully serving?
I'm telling you, he's the President of the United States.
No further questions.
Senator Cornyn?
To me, one of the most important aspects of the confirmation hearings is
Shelby
the
White House is
opportunity
another
to
one that
revisit
just really
first
hasn't been
principles
punched in the face enough.
about our government, separation
No,
of
I'm not
powers,
advocating
freedom of
violence.
speech. Ms. McCollum, thank
I'm
you
just
for your
pointing
eloquent
out.
testimony about the importance of free speech. But I want to, Professor Mascott, I want to start with you and take you back to the Declaration of Independence, where it says that
Oh, yeah.
government derives its just powers from consent of the
These
governed.
Democrats on these panels talk
And
about
while
how
we heard a lot from
law
the
enforcement
nominee
officers were
about
killed
staying in
during
her
that
lane,
event.
not making policy and the
In
like,
fact, in their
Um,
letters that are part of
I
the
personally
congressional
believe
record,
that
they actually say that.
many
that
judges have a
there were
blind spot
firearms present and that
when it
officers
comes
were
to
killed,
things like substantive due
which is an
process
absolute lie. There were
or
no firearms
articulating
in the
new and
Capitol.
unenumerated
And
rights,
the only person shot and
and
killed
eliminating
was an
any
unarmed
discussion or
woman.
debate or even vote
And I was
on some
watching
of
the
those
live stream when that happened.
rights that they discover,
There was zero
because
reason
the
to shoot that
judiciary
woman in the
says
fucking
this is the
neck.
way it is and we don't care what anybody else thinks.
But that
Could you just
officer
describe
will not
for
be
us
charged.
the danger
Um,
of eliminating
and
from
nothing's ever going to happen.
consider
to
the
him.
governed some of these important decisions under the guise of judicial lawmaking, like substantive due process?
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. And I think it's great to go back to considering the consent of the governed, obviously, because the right of the people and liberty is foundational to our constitutional system. And as my written testimony goes through in more depth than I mentioned today, I mean, I think there are multiple structural limitations in the constitutional system, some that we often overlook, that lead to quite a modest role for judges. So first, there's the role of federalism of the states, the people, our important institutions
I'm
like
gonna have to
religious
go back
bodies,
and
the
pull it
family,
up, but
continuing
Mike
to
Lee
have a
actually
great
had
say.
some
We the
really good
people
questions on
that
the
limits
interstate
really
commerce
the
clause,
power
um,
under the text of the
and how
Constitution that the
that is
federal
actually
government in
used
any
and
branch is supposed to
expands the
exercise.
footprint
The
of
federal government is one
government.
of limited powers, correct?
That's
Um,
correct, Senator, listed in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. And so
the
that
Commerce
structural
Clause is
constraint is
actually
the first
used
threshold thing to
to
be considering when thinking about the
vastly
federal role.
expand the powers
And
of the
the
federal government.
we're the source of the legal and constitutional authority for law to begin with. And then even within that
That's the
system,
reason
as
the
this
Interstate
body's
Commerce
discussed many
Clause is
times,
used in every
there's the
piece
separation of
gun
powers among
control,
three branches. And of course,
legislation.
with Congress being closest in elections to the American people and the president being elected, the role of the judiciary is quite
Forgive me,
quite modest.
since our time is limited,
Sure.
let me ask another question. And when judges get outside their lane, when they make policy, when they make political value judgments, does it violate those principles that you've articulated about our form of government and the limitations on
All right,
judicial
G23,
power?
take it easy, brother.
Yes, Senator, which is why it's important to have a muscular reliance on the text and structure of the Constitution and statutes.
Ms. Russell, I know your practice involves protection and defense of religious liberty. That's another provision of the First Amendment that Ms. McCollum addressed, that beyond free speech, the freedom of religion in our country. And when the Supreme Court justices identify new unenumerated rights and hold that no state, no local government can enact any policy in conflict with that new right that they identify, does that potentially endanger the religious liberty of Americans?
Well, yeah, it definitely could. If you are not taking into account sort of as I said, the foundational importance of religious liberty, and you instead
Well, you don't have to look very far. Look at what they did during
usurp
COVID.
that with the new
They
right
allowed
that
riots
you
to
created
go on,
that was
but
likely
shut
not
down
considered
churches.
when the initial provisions of the Constitution were drafted.
And in the Obergefell case, I think Justice Alito and
I mean, they
and
actually
perhaps
shut
Justice
down
Thomas
churches
and others
where
expressed
people
their
were in
concerns
their
that
cars
when
during church
judges make
services
law
and they were using
and create a
loudspeakers,
national standard and take
these
these
police
issues
departments
out of
actually
the
still
debate
shut
that
down
they
those
ordinarily
churches.
would be subject to in the political system and the legislative branch, that basically people who don't agree with it, let's say because of sincerely held religious belief, could be identified as bigots.
Well,
You,
certainly,
you share that
Yeah.
concern?
Jeff, this is the way.
well, yes,
Yeah.
because certainly if you
Firearms are
create
part of my
a new
religion.
right based on the
There actually is
prevailing
like a church
culture
of the
and
AR-15
their
or
thoughts
something.
about
I got to look them up.
whatever it might be, generally speaking, you're going to end up in a situation where everyone who has a traditional view of those subjects are going to be seen as the enemy and they will be demonized in the culture.
And it's the ultimate cancel culture.
Ultimately, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Cornyn. Senator Klobuchar.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Durbin, and thank you to all of you. Representative Beatty,
Dude, that
thank
bitch
you
got
so
more
much
teeth than a
for your
barracuda.
leadership and for being here today. You talked about in your testimony about how there have been
She looks like she could beat a
115
freaking beaver
justices,
chewing through a
and
tree.
only she will be the first, Judge Jackson, if confirmed, will be the first Black woman. And she will also be the first public defender. So those are two firsts sitting in the room where it happens, offering a different perspective. Could you give us your perspective? Two things.
And this
One,
lady is all about
on
race.
what that means.
All about it.
As someone
That's
that
the only thing that
knows what
matters
it's
to
like to
her.
go into an institution that didn't have different perspectives, that would be the House of Representatives. And two, just your view as a Black woman about the hearing yesterday.
Let me start with your last question. And first of all, Senator, thank you for that. As I witnessed yesterday, and certainly want to say to Congressional Black Caucus member, Senator Cory Booker, thank you yesterday. It was emotional.
I got
it was
to pull
heartfelt.
Cory Booker up.
But it
and
also
do a
spoke
video
not
on that.
only
It
to
was
Black
so
America,
freaking
but to
insane.
America of how valuable
Spartacus
this will be,
himself.
because what we will see when she is confirmed is what America looks like. We are no longer looking at where we were 56, 65 years ago, but yet we're still fighting for the same thing. So I say to little girls, and especially little Black girls, it will be important for them to see that they could do what her best friend said of her when they were 12 and 14
It's funny
years
how they
old.
can say that.
I think it builds hope for
about
America.
something
And we
like
know
this,
that all
but
too
then they
often as
also
elected
tell
officials,
little Black
and wanting
girls
to get
that
more
the world
people
is
who are
against them
representative of
and
this wonderful
they need the
America
government to
that
save
we
them,
live
and
in.
that
And that includes
a
making
child
the
is such an
change and having the
inconvenience
courage
that
as
they can
senators
abort it at any
to
time.
confirm a Black woman, not because she's Black. And this is why
That's
I want you to hear
exactly
loud
why
and
she's
clear,
there.
but because she is qualified.
And she's a leftist.
More qualified than most
because
we have
y'all
seen
dumbasses
in this room.
actually
And that's not just
filibustered
based
any
on my
Black
opinion or
conservative
my
judge.
thought, but it is based on facts. It is based on when you look through
Yeah,
the
that's a crow.
600
That's
some
exactly
opinions,
it. No,
when you
our
look through the
illustrious vice
12,000
president.
pages that were sent here on what she did on the United States Sentencing Commission, the 70-some thousand pages that came from the Obama library. When you look at what all the fact-finding checkers have said about her
Let me
record,
get something.
I say look to each of us. And this is why it is important to me. There is not a perfect person in this room. Yesterday, a minority senator said he did not agree with everything that his colleagues were saying. So I think you can look at anything or any person and find something that you want to find fault with. But in this case, there are so many things that she has just been impeccable on her reverence for the rule of law, for her impeccable decision-making. She is not perfect, but she is amazing. And that's what I want America to know. And I just want to end with this because I am also chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And I want you to know, while we are very diverse, our power is our unity. And we embrace and endorse her 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you've been a leader on voting rights. Yesterday, Judge Jackson talked about how the right to vote is a fundamental right in our democracy, as other nominees have said in the past.
We are not a democracy.
How can the court, in your view, particularly after what happened yesterday with the
want.
shadow
Well, we're
docket
becoming
case
a
in
democracy
Wisconsin,
thanks to assholes like
work
this.
to reestablish public confidence in voting rights cases? Very quickly.
Thank you for the question. Thank you also for your
But that's
leadership
the reason
in
they
trying
want
to protect democracy. in your
mail-in
role as
voting
chair of
for
the
any
Rules Committee.
reason at any time.
I think the court
That's
has a very important
the
role to
reason they
play to
want
preserve
zero
the right
ID
of
for
all
voting.
Americans to the vote. We now see
It's the reason
democracy
they
under
buried
attack
everything
in
from this last
unprecedented
election.
ways. It certainly began with the January 6th insurrection, but it continues now at the state level in some states that are rolling back protections that guarantee the right to vote. I am hopeful that the court will re-examine the role it has taken with regard to the Voting Rights Act, which it has
Alabama
stripped
has
of its essential
only
powers at the
in-person
Supreme
voting,
Court level.
really,
And I think a case
no early
has been
voting.
made that
And
there is a
people
need
still
for a
manage
new
to vote in Alabama,
structured Voting Rights Act. And we
for
hope, of
some
course,
reason.
that the Senate will ultimately come to accept that requirement.
Well, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm not going to ask another question, but
Yeah,
I did
my
want to say
dad,
to you, Mr. Rosenthal,
voted in
as someone who's
Georgia.
kept my friends since
Early
middle
voted
school and high school,
and had to wait
I
in line
especially
for
enjoyed
8
your
hours.
testimony. And it
Early
reminded
voting.
me of when
I
I
voted
asked one of
same
Sonia
day.
Sotomayor's
Now, I had
friends
to
in a
wait in
similar
line for
panel,
4 hours,
who
me
was
and
a
my
friend
wife,
from middle
and
school
my
or high
buddy and
school,
his wife.
what she was like at that point. Maybe it was elementary school. And he said judicious. And
But still,
so I enjoyed it very much. Thank you to all the
I
witnesses.
mean,
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. We've
voting
been
is
told by the
pretty
Republican
damn
staff
easy.
that the order based on early bird rule on their side.
Here's your
is
ID.
Senators
Prove
Lee,
who you
Tillis,
are.
Blackburn, and
Here's your
Cruz.
ballot.
It
If for
appears,
some
Senator
reason
Tillis, you're
you
next up.
can't prove
Thank you,
who
Mr.
you
Chair.
are, you get a provisional
Thank you all for
ballot.
being here. I listened to your testimony and watched it in my office. Mr. Rosenthal, you're getting married in a couple of weeks.
Yes, Senator.
And also wish that your father returns to good health.
Thank you.
Captain Thomas, thank you for your law enforcement service and your service in Iraqi freedom. Ms. McCollum, I think this is the first time I've asked somebody questions who were actually a plaintiff in a Supreme Court case. It's an honor.
I have Tourette's listening
Your
to this crap.
testimony was unbelievable. Before I leave today, I hope I can get one of your cards.
Ultimately, she's not going to change the composition of the Supreme Court. She's
so
just
you
going to
were
be
at
more of a
this
absolute
abortion clinic,
leftist than Judge
as
Beyer
a
was.
counselor.
Yes.
The only thing that
Sidewalk
sucks
counselor.
is she's going to be on the court
Yesterday,
for a
I tried
very,
to make a
very long
distinction because I
time.
think some people were approaching that case as a pro-life or pro-choice case, and I was trying to make the point it was about freedom of speech. You agree with that? I think you said that in your testimony.
Oh,
Sure.
God.
Now, in the amicus brief that was created, I think there were quotes in there. So these weren't words necessarily of those who created the amicus brief, but they were quotes from, I guess, the plaintiffs in the original case that you were mean, in your face, aggressive, and I think that the other quotes said that they even felt like they may be shot by you. Now, I know that was a couple of years ago, but that seems to be not characteristics of your behavior. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
You were out there,
Yeah.
you were not the only one. Were there others out there as life counselors or?
Sure.
Yeah. Were any of them mean, in your face people that looked likely to shoot somebody?
No, absolutely not.
So tell me a little bit about the bound. I'm
No,
sorry, I got to go.
they will,
quick, 'cause I'd
however-
like to hear you talk. I'd like for you to repeat your opening statement. But
Talk
tell me
about a couple of instances where
I was
someone
trying to
was
get with Judge
pro-life
Jackson
and
yesterday, who
actually
incidentally,
got violent.
Congresswoman, I think is eminently
But they're
qualified.
never going to mention
And
anybody
I
on the
find
left
it hard to
who
believe
is
that anybody on my
violent
side of the aisle would
constantly.
disagree with that. So this has more to do with the application of philosophy and worldviews that could potentially influence. But I think you should make no mistake
Obviously,
that I
if
agree
you
with the
believe
ABA, that
that,
she is highly qualified.
a
I'm glad
baby in the womb
she's
is
got the
still
rating.
a
But
baby. Well, you're a white supremacist.
I'm trying to get an
what the hell
idea
ever.
of what it was like on the ground. They were telling you, now one of the reasons you mentioned in your testimony that you may have to raise your voice is you were so far away from these young expectant mothers who may not have ever known that there was a choice of life that would fulfill them, like the mother who sent you the picture of her 3-month-old baby, who's now in her teens. So I could
It's the
understand
same
if you're
reason
several
these
feet away, you may
leftists
have to raise your voice
absolutely
just to get their
hate,
attention. Maybe that's what they meant by
pro-life
shouting it in your
clinics.
face. But
There's a couple
with
over in
the
Georgia.
Supreme Court striking, ultimately
one of
striking
them's
down
called
the underlying
Sound
Massachusetts
Choices,
law that was used as a
where
basis
women can go in
for the
and
complaint.
get medical care for free.
Were there
Get
people
an
that were inside the
ultrasound,
envelope,
pregnancy
or
tests,
maybe I was
prenatal
trying to
vitamins,
determine whether there were people that were escorting them in,
and
which are
they try
basically
to point them in a
expressing their
direction
free
of,
speech rights
you
to
can get
choice.
help
Were
with
they
this,
there,
you can
or
do
was it
this,
just
you
that?
don't have to
I mean, so
abort.
were there people
They
inside the
counsel
buffer
women,
who were able to
and the left
escort them
absolutely
in?
hates
And
these
your
claims.
argument was that you want to be there to hold their hand. I think you said, never walk the journey alone. Is that an accurate portrayal of the facts on the ground? That you felt like
Yeah.
you were not given
That would be a hell
fair
of a thing.
access?
Just
Fair,
go ahead
that's
and
true.
get all the
Okay.
pedos
Because,
that
yes,
she
you
was lied
have it
on
there,
to
Senator.
testify
And
about their
yes, they are inside the buffer zone,
propensity
and they're
for
also, they're talking
harming children,
to the mother to
and the
be.
fact that they will never
And-
That's what
stop
I
harming
thought.
children.
That's why I
But
just
we're
wanted
not,
to,
yes.
and I think it's wonderful that you're here because
Yeah.
you're either an Oscar-winning actor or actress, or the fact of the matter is that was a wholly unfair assertion
Yeah.
of who you were. Just a quick question. I actually
I
had
can't
one for
remember
Ms.
the
Russell and Ms.
schedule
Mascott.
for
I'm not going to
today. I
have
can't
time for
remember
both.
whether it's all just
So, Ms. Mascott,
panels
you
for
talked
and
about in your
against
opening
this judge, or
testimony the
whether she's
application
actually
and
backing
practice.
the
I was
seek
thinking
to
about a
testify
case
again
that
today.
Senator Cornyn brought up that had to do with
In fact, I think the judge might be done
congressional
with her testimony
direction.
today.
The plain word of the statute said that the removal, the two, are you familiar with this?
Are you talking about make the road in New
Democrats are
York?
going to force
Okay.
this
And it was my
judge
understanding
through,
that Judge Jackson
and
used
the
as a
Republicans
basis
are
for
probably going to
the
prove themselves
nationwide
to be
injunction
ballless
that
as
it did not
usual.
comply with the APA. But that seems to be a tactic every once in a while, even though the plain letter of the text seemed like
it's like Lindsey
and I think
Graham
that's the
talking
reason why it
about
was
voting for
ultimately
Justice Sotomayor,
struck down by the
Justice
DC
Kagan,
Circuit. But
like,
do you
it
know of
was
any
a
other
good thing that
examples
he
where Ms.
actually
Jackson
voted
may
for
have
those numbnuts.
applied a similar logic to a case?
Well, in that particular case that you're speaking of, I think it was not failing to rely on a provision that clearly limited the role of the courts and gave the discretion to make the decision to the acting Department of Homeland Security secretary. I think in other opinions, what seems to be the case is that Judge Jackson is using a blend of sources, perhaps relying on legislative history or looking at intent or purpose more than other justices in the past who have expressed exclusive commitment to textualism, or maybe in applying canons of construction, perhaps moving beyond text sometimes in a way that might be different from other justices in the past, like Justice Scalia and Thomas. So of course, it's hard to predict based on district court rulings how a judge will rule, but there are these other instances like the one you mentioned, or in the McGahn case, where the DC Circuit disagreed that suggests maybe
in the interest of time, because I know we have a vote.
The Senate
I'd
Judiciary
be very
Committee
interested. Thank you for
that tried to
but I'd be very
destroy
interested
Justice
as
Thomas
a
because
follow-up
he's
if
a
you have time over
conservative
the next
black
week to
judge.
just provide me a few specific
And these
examples
assholes
if you can. You don't have to go to a great level of detail, but I would appreciate it.
accused him of everything under the
Mr.
sun.
Chair, thank you. And Ms. McCollum, do you have one of those cards? I'm going to get it on the way out.
But
Thank
they'll
you.
get all pissy because someone just questions this judge's
Thanks, Senator Tillis.
decisions or sentencing decisions.
This isn't a coup. Senator Durbin has gone to vote, and as is customary, one of the members of the committee takes his place.
And this
and
fucking
I'm
moron
in the chair now, Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, and very pleased to have my round of questioning while I am taking the chair for Senator Durbin. Let me ask Dean Goluboff, you have an extraordinary career yourself as a trailblazer, the first female dean at the University of Virginia. You had a distinguished clerkship.
I'm going to run just a little bit longer, and then I got to get out of here. I got to go help my dad fix some soffits and stuff on the house.
Distinguished judges and scholars in
I'll
the
still
United
be
States,
listening to this
Yale
crap
Law
all
School,
day.
You went as well. A number of us on this panel have talked about the legitimacy crisis that the Supreme Court faces. Maybe the result of self-inflicted wounds, maybe the result of the times in which we live. But Justice Breyer's very thoughtful, deliberate.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was his nickname in college. I'm sure he probably had a lot better nicknames than that.
Judge Jackson as well seems to be one of the hallmarks of his ability to bring the court together to overcome divides and disagreements, which in my view is very important at this point in the court's history. Would you agree?
I would.
And maybe you could elaborate as to why that is important for this court at this moment in its history.
I think the court's authority, as Professor Mascott has been talking about in the separation of powers, really comes from its deliberative nature. It doesn't have the power of the sword. It doesn't have the power of the purse. What it has is its reality and perception of being a neutral arbiter. And I think Justice Breyer played a critical role in enhancing and facilitating deliberation across all of the justices of the court. And I think everything that we know about Judge Jackson suggests she will do exactly the same thing.
So the lack of trust and credibility.
He's one who never met a gun law that he didn't like.
It doesn't have
he
armies
never
or police forces
made a
or,
decision to restrain the federal government.
The trust and respect of the American people.
Yes, that's something Justice Breyer talks about frequently in his writing and in his speaking, is the fact that without the trust of the American people, the court simply can't do its job. The rule of law, the justices are committed to the rule of law, and the rule of law exists because the American people follow the rule of law and only do so when they have faith in the court.
Let me ask.
I've gone through and we've
and
done live streams of a couple of Supreme Court oral arguments where
Mr.
Justice Breyer proves he's an absolute
we are celebrating here a remarkable achievement.
And
I've said
chick's going to fill his shoes.
Should have happened long ago.
Probably overfill.
It's a leap into the present.
But that's why these Democrats want her so bad on the court.
Nomination by President Biden of the first Black woman to the United States Supreme Court. But as much as we celebrate, as I pointed out yesterday,
it's no different than Joe Biden saying he was going to pick a Black woman for his vice president. That would be her only qualification.
Set us back.
Or the only qualifications for his Supreme Court,
especially in this area of voting rights. John Lewis was
Black
a great
woman.
Friend and hero to you and to me on integration, backsliding as well. Maybe I can ask you to reflect on.
And fucking John Lewis may have done some stuff for civil rights in the past.
In this area.
But in the present,
about the ways that the Supreme Court
he was an absolute race
reversed some of the progress that was made in our own lifetime. Ms. Beatty, Congresswoman Beatty, why don't you go first?
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for that question. And I am sure that Congressman John Lewis is looking down on us in a hopeful manner, especially as it relates to civil rights and voting rights. I think what we have to look at first, as was said by both of the professors, that the power is not in the policy or the Congress. So I think what this does with this confirmation would be, it would be a hope for the people.
What is it Thomas Sowell said? He'd rather be ruled by the first 100 names in the phone book
that we have to first do our job. And I think we have an obligation to help the staff at Harvard by sending them policy, sending them voting rights legislation that they can then do within the rule of the law what the people are looking for. So I think that it starts here. And I think that
this is another chick who wants to absolutely federalize
as a member in the majority, with members in the majority and the minority, that the work starts with the House and the Senate. And so if that question would allow me to say that I am willing, because voting rights is the fundamental Rights Act of everything that we talk about right now, whether it is the freedom of speech, whether it is
universal
working with
background
our
checks,
police, whether it is being the voice for those who are voiceless. Let's start by saying we're going to give not only this justice, but all of the justices something that they can look at and rule on, because we've sent them something that we're united. And I would ask, since I'm here today and with that question, that I ask my colleagues that we start with voting rights legislation, that we look at where we are with nullification. If we look at where we are in that case with preclearance, if we look at history The voting rights are in with this, and you know
Yeah,
this well.
let's look
The
at
Voting
history,
Rights Act has
considering the
been
Democrat
reauthorized
Party has
in a
been the one that
bipartisan way.
has restricted
5
the
times.
rights of
4
black
Republican
people.
presidents reauthorized the Voting Rights Act.
Let's look at
Wouldn't this be a
Democrats
wonderful
who, when they
time
passed things
in
like
this America
welfare,
to
said
build a
that
better America
this was going
if this Senate and
to
this Congress
basically
could
lock
come
in the
together
black vote
and send
for
our
Democrats.
justices something that they could rule on that would be
Let's look at all your
reflective
gun
of our
control that is throwing
Thank you.
black
Mr.
people
Henderson.
in jail.
Senator
for
Blumenthal,
merely
thank you
having
so
a
much for the
firearm.
question. Let me say at the outset that I support completely the response of Congresswoman Beatty and believe her answer was full and complete. But let me also say that the right to vote is foundational of all other rights, as Congresswoman Beatty alluded to. And so all the issues that we've discussed this morning, from free speech to the rights of individual victims in cases of police
But the left
accountability
doesn't
or
believe in
others,
free
are
speech anymore.
all tied to the right to vote. The Supreme Court decision, beginning with the Shelby County decision in 2013, with the Abramovich decision of a couple of years ago, and recent interpretations of what the court has done by district court judges, raise serious questions about the fidelity of the court to the role that Congress has been designated to address discrimination under Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. The fact that the court seems to have gone out of its way to find ways of eviscerating the protection of the Voting Rights Act has taken us back literally to the period that existed prior to 1965 when the Voting Rights Act was adopted. Some people consider that criticism to be hyperbolic, but the truth is the facts make clear that what is happening now to voters, particularly voters of color, younger voters, seniors, individuals with disabilities, are in fact violations of that fundamental right to vote. When we deny access,
if you don't believe in an ID to
therein
vote,
lies
but you
the
believe
problem.
in all this
And
damn
so
gun
we have
control
petitioned Congress,
you're an
specifically the
absolute
Senate,
full
to
of
enact
shit,
new provisions that would help
moron.
to protect the right to vote. We are disappointed that earlier this year that effort was not undertaken with the complete bipartisan support of the Senate, but we hope that in the future that will happen. I remind you that 16 members, Republican members of the Senate, who voted for the Voting Rights Act in 2006 in the reauthorization, have so far been silent on this question of whether to move forward on the act. We hope they have a second opportunity to do
Thank
so.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Henderson. I'm going to call on Senator Blackburn.
This is the thing.
Thank you,
another
Mr.
thing that
Chairman.
kills me
I
is, one,
appreciate this so very much
they are
and the
Republicans who will
opportunity
vote for the
to
BS
have you
that
all
the
before
Democrats are
us.
putting
This
through.
has been
But
really
two,
quite a week.
a lot of them actually
here
voted
in
for
the
this
Senate
judge to go on
Judiciary
district
Committee.
courts.
Ms. McCullen, I would like to come to you first. I am so happy that
I still
you
like
are
Marsha
with
Blackburn
us
asking her the
today.
other day,
And
can you
I
define what a woman
appreciated
is?
your
And
comments.
this
I'm a mother
judge,
and a
who's supposed to
grandmother,
be
and
a
I
educated
like
person,
how you
couldn't
talked
say
about walking with women as they transition from their
a definition
pregnancies
for a woman.
to that motherhood,
something as simple
and
as
realizing the need to continue to support
biologically
women
someone born with a
after
fucking
they
uterus.
have those babies, and to support them as they go through this entire process. Likewise, I know that you do some good work to support post-abortive
It's
women
kind of like when I was doing
who
anatomy and
just
physiology
have
classes,
they
and I had a
grieve.
chick in there that
And acquaintances
wanted to know why
that
women
I
don't
know
get prostate
that
cancer.
have been through that process, there is a grief that is just many times hard to bear. It's true. So appreciate
There
your
were quite
work,
a few other
and
questions that
I
girl
know
asked
you
in
have a
classes
card
that
that you
were
give to women. I do.
less
Talk
than
to me
intelligent
just a
questions,
little
I
bit
should say.
about that, very quickly. Sure. Well, I have an extra one here
Yeah,
too.
you're gonna force me to
And
get
when
cordless headphones
walking
just because of
and a
you.
young mother comes up to me, as I said earlier, I say, "Good morning. I'm Eleanor. How can I help you?" And I give them the card at the same time. The card has hope, help, and
Yeah, men
love,
can get breast cancer.
and my
And
telephone number.
a
I'm not
lot of
afraid to
studies,
give that
believe it or
out.
not,
It
that
has
were
my
done on breast
website.
cancer
And then
were
on the
done on
back,
men.
A person's a person.
Because we do
no
have
matter how
all of
small.
the same tissues
I love
as
that.
women do.
So I just give that out. It
Ours
just
just
shows
isn't
that
exaggerated.
I'm trying not to be a
because
stranger.
the
And
lack of
in just a
estrogen.
few moments, Senator, I'm building up trust. And at least they have a name and a number, and I'm not just out there for no
That's why
reason.
I
I
find
have
it
a
really
purpose.
funny
that.
when
Let me ask you this. How
they
did
do
it
all these
make
breast
you feel
cancer awareness
in Judge Jackson's
campaigns. They
brief
never mention all
when
the
she
men that
referred
get breast
to
cancer.
pro-life women as hostile, noisy crowd of in-your-face protesters?
Well, as I said, it made me very sad, extremely sad. And that's not the case at all. In fact, if someone is doing those things, harassing or yelling, the sidewalk is not a place for anger. It's not a place for judgment. Everyone that comes to be a sidewalk counselor should be compassionate.
We are
not
living in
judgmental,
absolute
and
freaking
helpful
clown
and
world
kind.
right now.
So we
without
have
a doubt.
workshops. I run the workshops. If a
Okay,
new person
let
wants
me
to
let
be,
me move on just
Sure.
a minute. But
Let me
thank
go
you
check on the-
for that work, Ms. Mascott. May I come to you, please? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I closed out last night with Judge Jackson, reading back to her some of her opening statement. Now, everyone up here, as I've listened to you all, the ABA, their witnesses that were with us earlier, you talk about preserving our form of government. You talk about preserving equal access, equal justice. And there was a comment in Judge Jackson's opening that I read back to her because she left out something very important. I'm going to read this to you, and I'd like your comment. I've been a judge for nearly a decade now, and I take that responsibility and my duty to be independent very seriously. I decide cases from a neutral posture. I evaluate the facts and I interpret and apply the law to the facts of the case before me without fear or favor, consistent with my judicial oath. And I told her there was a word missing from that I thought deserved more attention. And that was, it should have been there, that it should be consistent with the Constitution, because that should be where
That's something you
justice
never see
goes
is
first.
a
Is that
woman
not
going
correct?
to compete in men's
That
sports.
is correct, Senator, and I think largely because the
wonder why.
Constitution, of course, gives the federal
Probably because
government
no
only
matter how many
limited and limited
steroids they
powers.
take,
And so to be able to have a
um,
context for interpreting relevant
like
statutory
a woman
text,
trying
one
to
first needs
fight
to think
in
about whether
men's MMA
Congress,
fights,
the federal government is authorized to take the
she's
action in
going
the
to
first
get
place,
crushed.
and where the text then falls within the constitutional structure and the judge's role in interpreting it. And, you know,
This
we had a
this
very
whole idea
difficult time,
of
never got her to nail down her
trans men
judicial
competing in
authority,
women's sports is
her judicial
absolutely
philosophy.
insane.
That concerned us. There's another thing I want to ask you about. This is where she talked about CRT in sentencing. This was from a 2015 speech. And I felt like this was really inappropriate. I also try to convince my
Oh, it's
students that
absolutely
sentencing is
hysterical.
just plain interesting on an intellectual level, in part because it melds together myriad types of law.
These women are getting
Criminal law, of
crushed
course, but also administrative law, constitutional law, critical race theory.
by guys that
Is critical
can't make it
race
in
theory
men's
a
sports.
type of law, Ms. Mascott? Well, Senator Blackburn, I teach a number of courses at Scalia Law School, and none involve critical race theory, so I would not be the best expert on that. As far as sentencing,
there
though,
are
I think,
very,
again, in that area as
very
in
few
all, it's
people
important
that
to
are
focus
actually
on the text of
standing up
law.
to
And
this
of course, Congress at the federal level would have the largest role in terms of establishing the range of appropriate sentences for a crime. And so folks
It's like
applying
I
that,
can't
of
remember who
course,
said it the other
always
night in one of the
will be
live
looking to the
streams.
text of the laws put in place by Congress. Congress has over the
Like
years
that
given a lot of
swimmer,
discretion, but could
when
narrow it if
everybody
it
lines
decided
up on
that
the
judges were not
blocks
applying the rule
and the
properly.
starter pistol goes
Thank
off,
you.
all the women
Thank
should
you.
just step
Mr.
down
Chairman,
and walk off.
before
They shouldn't
I-
even try to swim
Look,
against that guy.
I want to ask you, some of us have wanted those pre-sentencing memos. Are we going to be able to have access to those memos? I know we sent a letter to you. Where do we stand?
Well,
with
we've
that?
consulted with prosecutors and with victims' rights organizations, and they share my concern. This is very confidential, sensitive information, which is usually only seen by a judge. And to run the
In
risk
other
of bringing it
words,
to this committee.
We don't
and
want to be able
jeopardizing
to
or
examine her
worse,
record any further.
Is
innocent.
there
I'm-
no
I'm
way
gonna-
we can end?
I'd like to finish.
Okay.
Jeopardizing or worse, innocent third parties are children who have been
'Cause
victimized.
They want to look at this
I'm
evidence
sorry,
in a
Senator, I'm not going to
closed
be party to
hearing.
that. I would not want that on my conscience, that we
And
did this
these
for some
assholes
political
won't do it.
exercise here, which I think is totally unnecessary, and someone was harmed as a result of it. I'm going to resist it every step of the way.
No one wants to harm children.
Then leave
What
the
we want
reports
to
concealed.
do-
Leave the reports concealed.
And what is in the report that we cannot go into a classified setting?
I
and
want to tell you
see
something.
these?
If you are a parent of some child who's been exploited and you recognize this judge's name as perhaps presided at the trial and realize that now the report that has been kept in confidence all these years is now going to be handed over to the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, what would you think as a mother if it were your daughter or your child? I would think
I
this
would
is
want
an
to see the
act
sentencing for
that
the
is
guy who
reckless.
fucking
And
raped
to
my
do this in
child.
the name of some political, well, we're going to pursue this one more step and request information that has never been requested before by the Senate Judiciary Committee. Unacceptable.
I think
On my
as a
watch, I won't be
parent,
party to it.
I
do
would
not want
love
this on
to
my
see how
conscience,
the
and I hope you
judge
don't.
made the
I want to make certain that
decision
we
to
protect
sentence
children and
the
that
person who
we
harmed my child.
continue to do our best effort to protect children. I also want to make certain that we're going to have judges on the federal bench and justices that are going to protect those rights of children.
Well,
The fact that
you have-
you all have seen these,
No,
we haven't.
no, you're
The
wrong,
fact that
Senator.
even
Senator,
Judge
you're wrong.
Jackson referred.
I can't see them. I don't want to see them.
Okay.
And I want to make that clear. So
Okay.
it has not been given to the White House, nor has it been given to any member of the
Dick
Judiciary
Durbin, you're
Committee
so
that I know.
full of
And I am not
shit.
going to be party to any effort.
Mr.
for
Chairman,
political
nobody,
Mr.
there
Chairman,
is no one that wants to do anything that is going to
Good.
harm
Join me.
children.
Join me.
We want to make certain that we do our due diligence. And I know you
Join me in
have gotten
hiding all the
frustrated with
evidence
us
from
with
this
asking tough
fucking
questions, but that is our
moron.
job.
You may ask a
do
tough
that.
question as long as it is fair,
And
and that's all we ask.
every
Chairman, if I
question
might.
we have asked has been fair.
Senator Coons.
Mr. Chairman, could you just clarify for those who may not be familiar with the procedure and practice of prosecution and
What was
sentencing?
old
These
Chevy
PSRs,
Schumer
they were
talking
not
about
in
to
any
me?
case written by Judge Jackson. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And they are not about Judge Jackson in any way.
That is correct.
They are uniformly or
He's
nearly
talking about
uniformly
another
sealed
leftist
by
judge
court
that they
action.
are
Yes.
installing on a
And
court.
involve detailed and thorough interviews of the whole ecosystem around a crime, the victim, the perpetrator, families, and are described to those interviews
she's
as
going to
something
the
that
Second
will be
Circuit.
confidential and
Confidential.
sealed.
An open
Thank you.
lesbian.
And let me just say that I cannot imagine that we think we have to explore this
Why does her
area
sexuality
at the
even
risk of
fucking
innocent
matter?
third parties and children. I will not be
Her
party to it.
judicial
Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
just not going to do
record
it.
is
Senator
what
Booker.
should matter.
Again, this is new to me, and I'm sorry, I never did criminal law. But I've now asked a lot of prosecutors trying to be fair about
Good old
this,
crazy
and some of them
eyes.
served on this committee to understand. And the kind of confidential information, I thought, well, maybe you could redact it. And people were saying to me, no, you cannot even redact it. There is so much compromising confidential information that none of us would want out there. And Senator, who I have a lot of respect for and have actually thought a lot of her questions during this were thoughtful and probing and helped me, frankly. But she's new on the committee, but I know this. I've also asked this question. This is a body, this Judiciary Committee, that has, for Republican and Democratic presidents, done, am I fair to say, thousands of judges have been put onto federal benches. And this is a new territory. We have never asked for this kind of confidential information from a third branch of government. It's just never been done. And when you cross a precedent like this, now I've seen this having been 8 years in the Senate, what you're going to create now, first of all, this information should never be released to politicians, in my opinion. There's nothing additive to it. But what you do when you cross that line is now you're going to create a new precedent. So some performative Democrat, when there's a Republican judge coming before us, is going to demand the same information and use it or exploit it for political purposes. I don't think we want to cross that line. in this body where this has never come up in in the 200 years. I don't know how long this information has been collected in this manner. It just seems like a really large step that I don't think, as you said yesterday, it's going to change the conclusions that have already been drawn by people on either side.
No, it's not going to change your conclusions.
Wants
You
to come forward and say, I'm on the
freaking
fence about how
moron,
I'm gonna
because
vote.
you
This is
want
the
this
determining
chick on the
thing. I
court
just
so
don't hear
bad
that.
you can
And the
freaking taste
danger
it, because
weighing
she is
these,
an
the
absolute
danger is
leftist,
really in terms of changing the way this
like
committee
yourself.
operates, impeding upon issues of privacy. I think the danger way outweighs any probative value.
I can't imagine for a moment a parent
Like Chuck
who has
Schumer
been
talking,
somehow
a
related to a child
handful tried
exploited
to
in the
smear the
circumstance,
judge with
who lives in
misleading and
fear every
downright
day
false
of what's going to be
accusations.
made public, what's going to show up on the internet,
No.
would view this as just a routine request for information. It is so much more than that.
As
as I said,
Senator Booker
on
said
my watch,
yesterday, no
someone can take
amount
this
of
chair and this
cynicism
gavel over and
and
make a different decision.
nastiness
I'm not
could
going to be part of that. I
overshadow
will
Judge
not
Jackson.
be party to exposing this information to the possibility of disclosure and the harm that can come from it. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin. Dean Goluboff, thank you for your testimony today. Like Judge Jackson, you also clerked for Justice Breyer, and you're a well-respected dean of a prominent law school. I just wanted to ask a few quick questions of you and a number of other witnesses, if I might.
John Thune had to say
Judge
that.
Jackson's jurisprudence has been questioned or challenged, in particular with reference to her opinion in Make the Road New York. Is it your view that she, either in that case or in other cases you may have considered or reviewed, has overstepped the role of the court and has engaged in a jurisprudence that gets outside her lane as a judge?
Thank you for the question, Senator. It is absolutely my view that she does not get outside her lane. She, I think, comes down in cases on both sides, depending on what she sees in the facts and how she applies precedents. I think she has been assiduous and conscientious, both in that case and in others, to think about precisely the kinds of questions that Professor Mascott mentions. What is the role of the court? How much deference to offer to the other branches? How to ensure procedural consistency. She is, I think, quite consistent and very committed to the text and to precedent.
Making unconstitutional
And given your experience with
decisions.
Justice Breyer, what do
yeah,
you
that's
think
something to brag
anyone
about.
who's clerked for the justice might have learned about an even-handed and impartial manner and consensus building on the court?
Well, I certainly learned, and I think anyone who clerked for him also learned that exactly what you described is crucial to being a good justice, to taking every case on its own terms, to asking what the Constitution says about the particular case at hand, which includes the original public meaning, which Judge Jackson has said, but does not end with the original public meaning. Originalism is really a capacious term, and even among originalists, there are a lot of disagreements about how cases should come out. Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas disagree quite considerably about how much to consider precedent or not in their own decisions. And the interpretive part of constitutional interpretation is really the first part. You look to original public meaning. That's what Judge Jackson has said she would do. And then the second part is you apply it. And you have to consider the facts of the case and precedent when you do that. And I think Justice Breyer taught all of us that the best way to do that is in conversation with justices across the court and taking the deliberative process very seriously, which he did, creating real relationships across justices so that you can have real conversations and learn from each other as you wrestle with these really hard questions. I don't think we would spend quite so much time thinking about the judge's approach.
If someone harms
or,
my children
or
and they get out
qualifications
early,
if the interpretive process were just automatic and mechanical. It requires judgment. It requires
it's not going to be the best
discernment,
thing for their
that's what Justice
health.
Breyer taught us.
To follow up on a previous exchange, do you have any doubt that Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is the duly elected president of the United States?
I do not.
Thank you. Captain, if I might, Captain Thomas, I was a county executive of a county, had the second largest police force in my admittedly small state. We had a very active chapter of Noble. I have a long working relationship with some Noble leadership.
Funny thing
I'm thrilled that you are here as the head of Noble, our nation's largest law enforcement organization of Black law enforcement officers, which has also endorsed Judge Jackson's nomination. How do you view her record, her commitment to public safety, her engagement with the law enforcement community?
Destroying our constitutional
Thank you, Senator.
form of
With all the information that we have received, different notes from different organizations, I feel very confident in her nomination for this seat. I'd like to make a statement.
Oh, I bet you would like to make a statement, buddy.
Her temperament, her fairness, her respect for the law, and her honor of the Constitution make Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson exactly what we should expect from someone who will rule on matters that will affect our country and judicial system for generations.
That
Thank
is
you.
a terrifying
Thank you very much,
statement,
Captain, and thank you for the clarity and forcefulness of that
especially
endorsement. Congresswoman,
considering
I might
the decisions
just
that
ask you a
Justice
closing
Breyer
question.
made.
I've been struck at Judge Jackson's personal story and at the central role that the doors
And
of
again, it's like
opportunity
the
opened by
live stream I
HBCUs
did
to
about
her parents has played in that impressive arc of her story.
Abramski,
I'd just be
a
interested
guy
in
who
your sharing
bought
with
a
us the role
firearm for
that
his uncle,
HBCUs
went through
play
a
in
background
our
check,
education
then
system, in our
transferred the
nation,
firearm to his uncle
and in
through an
providing that
FFL,
remarkable pathway forward.
and they still want to put this guy in prison.
Thank you for that
And
question.
Justice Breyer was
And as
all
an
about putting the guy in
HBCU
prison.
graduate, as well as all 5 of my siblings, I can speak to that directly. I had an opportunity to probably attend any university that I wanted to, first generation going to college. But thank goodness for my parents who said to me that I would be more balanced and more grounded as a young girl coming from public school system in an inner city school, that they thought it was important for me to do that and then later go wherever I wanted to. I think it gives you that extra
because
sense of confidence.
Why would you
I think it
want to
also
be,
made me
I
value
don't
that
know,
diversity.
exposed
I had
to
people from
actual
the
diverse
continent of Africa
opinions?
teaching me. It was the first time in my history that I had seen so many professors and scholars who looked like me. So it made me soar when I walked into other rooms. I think like Judge Jackson, when I heard her tell her story of how she felt that first week or month at Harvard, but it was, I believe, her success and confidence and wind beneath her wing, her parents. Her parents and that grounding of HBCU universities, and that's
This
what
lady
they
will
do
run her
for
mouth
so
about
many
all
of
this
us.
shit.
Thank you.
So I think it
But
plays a
she is
valuable role.
completely
Thank you,
for policies that have
Thanks, Senator Cruz. Senator
destroyed
Cruz.
black families.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a moment ago, Senator Coons was having an exchange where he described Judge Jackson's jurisprudence as assiduously fair and even-handed. Professor Mascott, in Make the Road New York versus McAleenan, Judge Jackson found a cause of action to challenge the Department of Homeland Security's determination of the scope of which aliens are subject to expedited removal. In doing so, she disregarded the plain language of the statute that explicitly said the secretary had, quote, sole and unreviewable discretion to set the designation at any time. That decision resulted in a nationwide injunction preventing the Department of Homeland Security from removing illegal aliens from this country. That decision was reversed by the DC Circuit unanimously. In your judgment, was her decision in Make the Road New York versus McAleenan assiduously fair and even-handed?
Well, Senator, I cannot sit in judge motivation of what was driving particular interpretation.
opinion.
In terms of the interpretation of the statutory text and structure, the opinion overlooked the clear discretion that was given to the acting Secretary of Homeland Security in the expedited removal
Plain
context.
and explicit text of the statute.
Plain and explicit text of the statute, and actually text of the statute that had been applied several times previously when acting heads of the Department of Homeland Security had, using just policy notice, made changes in expedited removal.
Thank you. Let me shift. Ms. Serrano, thank you for the work you do with children who are victims of sexual exploitation. The work you do is very, very powerful. As you know, significant concern has been raised by myself and others about Judge Jackson's pattern in sentencing criminal defendants guilty of either possession or distribution of child pornography. In the Harvard Law Review, she wrote a note advocating a new way of examining restrictions on sexual offenders and arguing for a standard that, if applied, would likely result in striking down the sexually violent predator civil commitment laws in states across the country, and could arguably also strike down the sex offender registry laws across the country. Ms. Serrano, what would be the effect if the view she articulated in the Harvard Law Review was adopted by the Supreme Court, and if those laws in turn were struck down?
I'm not familiar with Judge Jackson's writing in the Harvard Law Review, but I can tell you that sex offender registry plays a critical part in allowing the community to identify where people who have demonstrated by their conviction of a sexual interest in children or other exploitative behavior such as rape or that sort of thing. As far as civil commitment, there are certainly state laws. I'm not familiar with all of them, but there is a process in which the due process is done, whether someone should be civilly committed because they cannot function in society due to their sexual deviance.
So, Ms. Serrano, we've gone over in some detail. The Democrat talking point is that criticism about this issue is based on cherry picking. Yesterday, I gave Judge Jackson a chance to explain all of the child porn cases she's ever sentenced in. And that's a universe of 10 cases. Of them, 5 of them, Downs, Cooper, Hess, Kane, and Buttrey, 5 of them, she sentenced the statutory mandatory minimum, the absolute lowest sentence that was allowable under law. She has a pattern when there are prosecutorial recommendations of sentencing on average 48% less than the prosecutors have asked with regard to those in possession of child porn. And she repeatedly articulates, for example, in the Cooper case, but she does this in every
Don't
case,
associate that shit with me.
she thinks the sentencing enhancement for the number of images of child porn makes no sense and isn't valid. And rather than having a 5-level sentencing enhancement, she reduces it to a 2-level enhancement. Ms. Serrano, does that make any sense to you that there is no difference whatsoever between
it doesn't make
who is
sense
in
to
possession of a
anybody
single
who
image
actually
versus another
believes in
defendant who is
protecting
in possession
children.
of hundreds, or in
But it makes
in one
perfect
of the
sense to the
cases
left,
in front of
considering
Judge
they are
Jackson,
trying
someone that
to
had 6,700 images of children, some very, very young children,
child
infants,
molestation.
toddlers. Does it make any sense that she would
That's why they
systematically
actually,
say
what-
those are
what is the term,
identical and that she's
maps?
not going to apply the enhancement in the guidelines?
Thank you, Senator. I am not familiar with Judge Jackson's sentencing. I apologize. I was doing my day job yesterday, so I wasn't able to watch the hearings as much as I would have liked to. But I can share with you that the increases for the number of images, I think, accurately reflects the type of offender that you're dealing with. Somebody with, you mentioned 6,700, that's actually on the low side. When I was doing prosecuting cases, we're talking about people with terabytes or millions of images. And so somebody with that type of collection should conceivably be sentenced more harshly than somebody with, say, 20 images or 50 images.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I actually really love this. I've been through 3 Supreme Court justice hearings, and when the 10 people come forward from all different backgrounds in America, and
Yeah, that's what
supporting
it
a
is.
candidate, not
Minor
supporting
attracted
a candidate,
persons.
it is always uplifting to me. And I have a lot of respect and honor for everybody on this panel. You all are great Americans who are dedicated to this country's highest ideals as you see them. And to give you an example of why I'm so serious, I had in a previous panel
Walker
of a Supreme Court justice I was dead set against, my constitutional law professor come in and be dead set for them. And I love this professor, still do.
That
And
it's
I
okay
love him
to
not
be
just because he's a great
attracted to
professor, but also
children.
because he passed me.
But so labeling anyone wholly by their sexual
I just want you to know, you may
desires
feel
doesn't
partisan tension in this
indicate
room,
anything
but
about
there's a
their
lot of
morality.
respect for the 10 of you who took time out of your schedule. Many of you traveled a very long way. And so I want to say thank you.
And here we
Mr.
go with
President,
the judge
Captain, my questions are for you, but if you don't mind, I'm going to take a quick minute to
very
address
much
the Congresswoman and just want to
light
say a couple
on
things
sentencing
to her
child
publicly
molesters.
that are really important. First of all, the Congressional Black Caucus, it has been one of the greatest privileges of my life to be a member of too few
assistant
senators that have ever been a
professor
member
at
of
Virginia
that body. And I want to say
University is
publicly,
taking
because this is
heat
true,
for saying
I
it
tried for
isn't
years to get on this
necessarily
committee.
immoral for adults
And
to be
the
sexually
Congressional Black
attracted
Caucus
to children,
advocated for me for years.
prompting college
Went to Chuck
officials to
Schumer
put
and
out a
said,
statement.
you need to get Senator Booker, not just because you haven't had an African-American on there for a long time, but you guys saw faith in me that I could
A lot of
represent
people,
well
when
here,
they
and I
hear
just
the
wanna
term
thank you for that.
pedophile,
And the second thing
automatically
is just very
assume that
personally
means
to you.
sex offender.
I had one of the most difficult summers of my life.
And that isn't
last summer.
true. Walker
You know
said
this, my brother
during
had a terrible stroke.
during the
And when you see people up
28-minute
here on this
interview,
panel, you don't know what they
and
all
it
have been
leads to a
through.
lot of misconceptions
I did not
about
know that the
attractions
chairwoman
towards
of the
minors.
Congressional Black Caucus had a horrific stroke at the age of 50 that left her seriously
Again, the left
debilitated
is trying
to the point where you could not
normalize
walk.
child molestation,
And
and
your
then here it
story at
is
my
with
time
a
of family crisis
judge
to me,
that is going
talk about
easy on
tears.
child
You were
molesters.
one of the best people I spoke to by telling me your story. And I see you now sitting there.
Okay.
It just is tremendous to me who you are. And I've my depth of love and respect for you, especially showing up for me at a time I really needed it.
Thank you.
Really quickly, sir, I love Noble. They were on my transition team to be mayor of the city of Newark. I learned from your organization, your recommendations to me about a city
Good old
that
Spartacus.
was really struggling with crime. And I'm happy to see Honorable Marshall and others who have to live this life of knowing, confronting some of the ugliest parts of our country, which is what happens in communities that are struggling with high rates of crime. I want to say for the record, because it often doesn't get said, Chris Murphy's book put this data point in there that there is much gun violence in inner city communities as there are in other low-income communities that might be rural and might not have the same ethnic diversity. So I don't want to pick on any communities here who are struggling with crime. Red states have high crime rates, blue states have crime rates. This is not a partisan issue. This is a human urgency.
Major
I
epicenters
have
of
shown
crime
up before
located?
ambulances at sites where young people have been shot. I've seen the horror and have been traumatized it. And I have so much respect for police officers because what they go through every single day on the brink,
Much
often
like
in the gap
in
between safety
any,
and not safety.
Area.
I have seen my
They are
officers.
normally
I remember
Democrat
shooting
controlled
where
areas.
my officers ran in, no situational awareness, upstairs to see a woman who had committed suicide and had shot her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go back to work the next day. And so I just want to ask you, then I'm done, this one question, because I know what's at stake. And here is a Supreme Court justice to the highest court in the land. And there have been people casting aspersions that she may not be the justice that would keep us safe. As a person in this room, I doubt there's anybody more
when you
in this
have a
room right
judge
now
who is going easy
that
on
lives in
child
that gap
molesters,
between safety and horrific
how
violence.
exactly is
Why
that
are you so
keeping a
confident,
community
despite
safe?
all the aspersions that have been cast, that this person will be a phenomenal justice for the safety and security of families in America?
Say they're going to start with the law enforcement that we have present throughout the United States now. The Supreme Court justice just going to make it more, if it's something get before the Supreme Court dealing with law enforcement, it can make a difference, but we got to start at local level with the law
because I'll
enforcement.
guarantee you this
So that's why
is for red
my
flag laws,
organization,
and he
NOBLE, is
knows
so
this
important.
judge will
We out there
ultimately
discussing
uphold
things with
red flag laws,
high crime,
and
gun
many other
violence,
gun control
where we have a
issues.
significant program, the law in your community. And it starts by a conversation to stop a confrontation. So everybody get involved, get the chapter. We've got 50 chapters throughout the nation. We all try to get on the same page. The crime, they're going to continue, but we can make it better. We're trying to build trust back in the communities with law enforcement. That's our main purpose. Judge Ketanji Jackson, she know about some of the neighborhoods. She grew up in Miami. Miami have a high crime rate. She said she saw it firsthand growing up. She saw it firsthand.
Saw it firsthand, but she will go
So
easy
the decision
on
when it comes to law
people
enforcement is going to be
like
important
drug
because
dealers,
we all
who
got
are
to live here in
dealing
America. But we
heroin
can start
and
making a difference
fentanyl.
today.
That was another guy
For that
that she
nomination,
went
and not
really
just pass the
easy
nomination. We talk about the voting
on.
rights.
And in the
We
hearing
talk
the
about
other
everything.
day,
In this, I'm saying
her
I've been watching
statements
this
to this guy were, "I'm
confirmation
sorry, I
hearing,
have
man,
to
for
sentence you to
since
this.
Monday. I like, man, I
I'm
don't believe that.
restrained by
Cause I've never been
sentencing
to this. Thought it
guidelines."
was a big history class, you know, but and civics class. I remember civics. But she can make a difference. Not only her, but she got 8 other associates on that Supreme Court team with her. They all gonna have to sit down and talk and make this better together. One person not gonna solve this problem. One person not gonna make a difference. But she got 8 other justices on that Supreme Court. And everything's going fine, people. America's doing a great job. I don't get caught up into the politics, the Democrats, Republicans. I'm just being honest, I don't.
Oh, bullshit.
But I know it's needed. I know we got to get things done, so everybody got to work together. Everybody got to work together. But we do need Noble out there in the communities nationwide. So you need one in your city, contact Noble.
Amen. Everybody has to work together, Chairman.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bookter and Captain Thomas. The next up is Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. Ms. Serrano, if I could just start with you, I want to say a particular thank you to you for the work, the incredible work that you do when it comes to human trafficking, child trafficking in particular. I know that you were 18 years as a federal prosecutor handling child pornography and child exploitation offenses. Those are terrible crimes to have to prosecute. And I want to thank you for doing that, and thank you now for the work that you do with Operation Underground Railroad. I mean, it's just incredible. I wonder if you could speak to us a little bit from your experience as a prosecutor and now as someone who is working to combat this epidemic of human trafficking, child sex trafficking in this country. It's a global epidemic, actually, but it's one, unfortunately, in this country, too. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you have seen in your experience about the connection between human trafficking and child pornography?
So human trafficking is a broad term that covers a bunch of different types of crimes, whether it's forced labor, et cetera. But within that, there's the sexual sex trafficking. And oftentimes when you're dealing with sex trafficking of minors, part of the process to break down the victim or potentially advertise the victim to sex buyers, traffickers, or
and again, I say
create child
Google
pornography, which are sexually explicit pictures of children under the age of 18.
Twitter,
Likewise, the flip side is
YouTube,
if someone as a young
can
child
all
has been
find
sexually
gun
abused
content
as a
if I
child,
just showed a gun
perhaps,
on a live
they were
stream.
victims of CSAM, child
But they can't
sexual
seem to
exploitation
find
material.
the
They may
people,
not have gotten the resources or
producing
aftercare, for
kiddie
example, that
porn.
my organization provides to get them the help that they need. Unfortunately, they become very vulnerable to become trafficked. So it's kind of like a chicken and the egg problem, where
last year,
sometimes
and I think
one
it's still
will
ongoing,
influence or increase the other.
So let me
person
ask you
had
this:
some
in terms of the
child porn
children
made
who are
about them,
exploited in these
and
images,
it was still on Twitter.
is it fair to say
years
that
later.
many of these
And
children
Twitter
were
basically said
sex
that they
trafficked, that
couldn't
they are
remove it.
trafficking victims themselves?
Of the ones that we can identify, sometimes yes. The children that are depicted in the child pornography or CSAM images, some of them are trafficked, yes.
And what about the demand side of this? Because unfortunately, the reason that there is human trafficking of any kind, including sex trafficking in children, is because there's a demand for it. And does, in your experience,
New York
does
Post.
child pornography help drive the demand for human trafficking and sex trafficking
Yeah,
in
this
children?
was it.
It can, yes. An argument that I would routinely make before district judges in my
Twitter
district
refused
would
to
be,
remove
you know,
child
sometimes you have
porn because it
individuals who
didn't
are
violate
looking at
policies.
images online of child pornography. And then oftentimes
Twitter refused to
that
take
will not
down widely
satiate
shared
their
pornographic
need
images
for this
and
material,
videos
and they'll
of
go out and
teenage
actually
sex
commit an
trafficking
offense.
victim
It's no different than you walk
because
by,
an
and this is a very
investigation
simplistic
didn't find a violation
analogy.
of the company's
You know, you can walk by a
policies.
bakery and smell the
The
sugary,
federal
chocolate
suit
cake,
filed
but
Wednesday
sometimes
by
it
the
gets to you
victim
so
and
much you
his
go in and buy a
mother in the
slice.
Northern
Again, it's
District
very
of
simplistic. I'm
California
not trying to
alleges
make light
Twitter
of it,
made
but
money
that's a very
off of
simple
clips which
analogy
showed
to
a
explain it.
13-year-old
Thank
engaged
you.
in
Thank you for
sex
that. And again,
act.
thank you for the incredible work that you do. Mr.
And
Marshall,
from a
General
child
Marshall,
sexual abuse
thank you for being here.
material
You're a
or
prosecutor.
child porn,
You
the
have been,
suit
but even
states.
before this role, which is a prosecutorial one, you were a district attorney. Let me just ask you, when you recommended sentences
when
to
was
judges, which you would do in your role as a prosecutor, did you base your recommendation on what you thought was necessary to keep the public safe?
So this
Senator,
was January
absolutely,
21st
and also
of
the egregious nature of the
2021.
facts that we were dealing with.
And this is
So
still
if you
ongoing.
made a recommendation to a
But
judge and
Twitter,
that judge
Facebook,
went 90% or more
YouTube, all
below your
owned by the same
recommendation
company,
that you thought was
can
necessary to
remove
keep the public
people
safe, would you be
like,
worried about the
P80
effect that
Ralph.
might have in terms of endangering members of the community?
Gravely concerned, not only is it related to the particular case, but also the message it sends to the community about how we would hold individuals personally accountable
Oh, yeah,
for
they
crimes
do.
they commit.
So in other words, if you
They've got
have a
plenty
judge
of
who
groups
consistently
like that.
sentences, let's
YouTube
say in an area,
shows,
let's say child
if you
pornography,
dig into
below what the government
shows
is
a
asking
lot of
for,
stuff.
what guidelines are asking for,
Facebook
and you're
has
saying
a
that the
bunch of
message that
private
sends
groups.
is
Twitter
that you're not very tough
pushes
on this,
it.
you're not willing to hold these people accountable.
But they're
have I got that
removing
right?
gun
Absolutely.
content
So,
for people who are actually
let me ask you
showing
this.
people
You
how
said
to be
also you
safe
said
with
based on the
firearms.
gravity of the crime.
We live in
when
an
it comes to
absolute
things like
upside-down
child
clown world.
exploitation and images that exploit children, would you say that the more, if you have an offender who has thousands of images, that's probably worse than an offender who has one or two, and that you might want to sentence that offender with hundreds and thousands more than the person who has one or two? Is that a fair thing to say?
It's fair, and in fact, it's been my practice. As somebody that has tried and convicted those who traffic in child pornography, I've had a chance to be able to see those images, because one of the things that I also do as that advocate is for that child that is in that image that has been harmed as a result of what's taken place. And so not only do we want to be able to deter that conduct, but also we want to be able to be that voice for the voiceless in this case, and it's those children whose images are being trafficked.
Because they often, I mean, the kids who have been trafficked, their
them
images have been
in
used.
prison
They
and
often don't have
keep
anybody to
them
speak for them,
in
right? I mean, you
prison.
come into court, the judge has got to do justice in a
Or
way. The judge has got to
if
do
you
justice
let
by
them out,
them on behalf of
don't
them,
charge the
because there's
parents
nobody to
when the
speak for them. It's not like they don't get to
parents,
prosecute the case, right? A lot of times we don't even know who these kids
practice
are. We
good
can't
habits
find
of
them. We
gardening
can't help
with,
them. So it's really up to the
fertilizer,
court
I
to
should
do
say.
something on their behalf. Is that fair to say?
The court is the ultimate voice.
Yeah. I wish that Judge Jackson shared your perspective, General. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I want to apologize to Senator Hirono. I recognize Senator Booker, and she was next in line. I hope she will forgive me.
I forgive you.
Thank you. Now I recognize.
Well, if you're asking for forgiveness, I was supposed to read something into the record just to ask Senator Hirono. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund asked that we enter their report into the record. May I do that?
Go ahead.
I would like to ask for that to be entered into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you very
Not
much.
patient. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Captain Thomas, Noble's support for Judge Jackson is a powerful counter to the foundless charge that Judge Jackson is soft on crime. I thank all of you for
Yeah, that
being
lady
here.
did end up dying.
Congresswoman
She ended up
Beatty.
having cancer.
We all know that Judge Jackson is eminently qualified.
This lady,
her character, her
in Texas,
integrity, her humanity, her kindness, her
the guy who
fairness,
molested her
leadership.
child.
These were qualities that were
She
apparent
shot,
from a
I
really
think,
young
6
age.
times
And
and hit
I
this guy
thank
5
Mr.
times in the back of
Rosenthal
the
for
head in the
telling us
courtroom.
about what she was as a young girl.
You
And
go,
it's
mama.
An incredible story, and
But
I
she ended up
really
dying
enjoyed
of
listening
breast cancer,
to
I
you.
think.
Congresswoman Beatty, as you listened to Judge Jackson yesterday, especially when she talked about
summer camp.
her experience at Harvard and the need for perseverance, I was going to ask you whether you could relate to that, but clearly you could, and so could I. Do you think the message of perseverance is a powerful message, especially to Black
I like
women
that.
and girls in this
Others
country?
criticized her for
First of all, let
brushing
me just say
aside
not
the
only
legal
thank you for the
system,
question, but thank you for your
when she
service and
shot
what
the
you
son of a
represent.
bitch who
I think it is an
molested her
extremely
child,
powerful and
raped her
needed
child.
message that we send out to little girls, all little girls, but specifically those who are of color. And I think what you saw yesterday builds for our children, grandchildren, and those yet unborn, because even today, we are fighting for things that we were fighting for in 1963,
Yeah, I
64,
don't give a shit whether she
65,
was high on
and 68.
methamphetamine at the
So
time of the
today
shooting.
could not only be landmark as we do this, it could propel us for the future that every little girl will then believe that she can soar.
And believe me, as an immigrant, poor kid, I can relate. It
let
was
me
a very
Again, I
touching
don't care
moment.
that she has a criminal
Let me
record.
just quickly
The
say
fact
this
is,
because we talk
she
about
shot the
the
son of a bitch
rule
who
of law.
molested
I
her
think
child.
you also have to look at judicial temperament.
Mm-hmm.
And what you saw yesterday, beyond her talking about her early childhood, was her response to the tough questions, maybe I think some unfair questions. You saw judicial temperament.
Exactly. Thank you. Dean Goldboff, we know that many
Yeah,
of the
she was
Supreme Court
convicted on a
decisions
lesser
are
charge
unanimous
of
or
voluntary manslaughter.
pretty close to that, but then
who
we're
the hell
seeing more
wouldn't
and more
plot
5-4
on
or
killing the person
63 decisions. And as I
fucking raped
said,
their child?
we have a very, in my view, an ideologically divided
court. And you were asked earlier what the impact of these kinds of split
Fucker
decisions,
sentenced her to
especially
10
in
years
areas of
for
voting
killing the
rights,
guy that
LGBTQ
molested her
plus
child.
rights,
She ended up doing
abortion
3.
rights, workers' rights, union rights.
And then, of course, she died
These are
later.
the most consequential kind
But
of cases
she
where
would
we
have
can
literally
expect
died in
more
prison
split decisions.
had they not
Judge
released
Jackson
her
was
after
asked
3 years.
repeatedly about her judicial philosophy, and she does have one. It has to do with her methodology. I wanted to ask you, do you think all of our justices should view themselves as originalists?
I think every justice has to read the Constitution as they think they should. I think they have to be committed to the Constitution and committed to the judicial role in the constitutional scheme. But I do not personally think that everyone has to have the same approach to the Constitution.
I agree with you, because as an example of an originalist, if we were to follow Justice Scalia's view of originalism, we would not have same-sex marriage in our country, because the Obergefell case would have been decided very differently under Justice Scalia's view of originalism. And in fact, Justices Thomas and Alito, also originalists, and in their view, they've already signaled that they would like to revisit Obergefell. I think the LGBTQ plus community is very, very concerned about that. For Mr. Henderson, excuse me, thank you very much also for being here. You represent an organization deeply committed to protecting the rights and civil liberties of all Americans. What would you tell Americans who want to know if a future Justice Jackson will stand up for them and protect their rights?
Thank you for the thank you for the question, Senator. Let me say, I begin first with Judge Jackson's
didn't realize that
preparation
kid went that
for the
fucking
role that she
sideways.
hopefully is about to assume.
Sentenced to
And we've
25
heard
years to life in
both in the
prison
days that she
for stomping to
testified
death
and
a man
again
who
today,
Willie
how
Messner
exemplary
had
her credentials are, how she has
let live on the
prepared
family
herself
property
in a
in
way
dispute
that
over
is really
tools.
destined for this moment. She has the embodiment of fairness and judicial temperament. She brings a level of
Hey,
excellence and
when
preparation
you're
unparalleled
raped as a
in the
child,
appointment of Supreme Court
it's
justices.
pretty damn
There
hard
is a
to recover
deep
from
sense
that.
of commitment to
I'm
fairness
not
that she
excusing the dude's
exudes,
behavior, but I'm
both
just
in
saying,
her writings as a judge, but also
know,
in her daily
his
interactions,
mom shooting the
both
guy
on
that
and
raped
off the
him.
court. There is a
I have
fundamental
no
sense
sympathy
of
for the dude.
inherent fairness that she certainly embodies. And I think all Americans,
Hey,
and
Casey, what's up, man? I
persons
was
who are
off the
not
screen reading that other thing. I didn't see you
American
come in.
citizens, but are in this country, are guaranteed that she will approach the Constitution with fairness
Well, it's
and will approach the
when they say
individual
thank you before they
circumstances
start
of
to
the
answer
cases
this shit.
before her. I
Most
think
of the
that's all we
time, they
could
are taught to
possibly
do
ask
that
a
because it
justice
gives
to
them
do.
a little bit to
Thank you. Thank you,
try to
Mr. Chairman.
formulate an answer.
Senator Padilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, over the last 3 days, we've heard over and over again, as we should.
Yeah, they all
about
bragging about going to
the
these
incredible
big
qualifications
institutions
that Judge
that don't mean
Ketanji
anything
Brown
to me.
Jackson has to serve on the Supreme Court. And I know I've touted them each and every day of this hearing myself. Hopefully you've seen me do it if you've been watching the hearings. And I'm going to do it again here in a minute. But before I do,
Yeah, I
wanna
think I heard
explain
about that one. Corey.
why I'm doing it, why I keep doing it.
And
It's
as
because
far
I
as I'm
do believe
concerned, if
every
you
American should know,
practice good gardening habits
should
with
know
child molesters,
Ketanji Brown Jackson, the judge.
Well,
Ketanji Brown Jackson, the
you
person.
know, you should
and
just
the
get
fact
more
that she represents the very best
opportunities
of our
to
country.
fertilize your garden.
That she's not just qualified,
You definitely
but
shouldn't be in
extraordinarily
prison for
qualified
practicing
to
good
serve
gardening
on the
habits.
Supreme Court of the United States. And because of her qualifications and with her experiences, professional and life experiences that she brings, she will make the Supreme Court better. And she will make our country better.
None of that should
So,
matter. The only thing
it
that
is
should
my
matter is
sincere
if
desire
she
that
will
for anybody
apply
watching
the
these proceedings
Constitution
from the
as it is
audience
written.
here in
That's the only thing that
this
should matter.
room or
from
all
home
this life
or online.
experience and all
You could
this other
take
shit
nothing else
doesn't
away
matter.
from these last 4 days. It's Judge Jackson's qualifications: a public school education, followed by degrees from Harvard College and Harvard Law School, clerkships at the federal district court, at the federal court of appeals,
all
and
of
the
these
United
people
States
talking so good
Supreme
about
Court.
this woman
2 years
would
as a
absolutely
federal
trash
public defender,
any
2
black
years as
conservative.
a staff member of the United States Sentencing
A lot of
Commission,
them sitting there
and
now
4 years
praising her
as its
were
vice
people
chair.
who were there for Justice Thomas,
3
and they tried
separate
destroying him.
confirmations by the United States Senate, each time on a bipartisan basis.
And that's another thing that
including
pisses me
2
off, because they
lifetime
actually did
judicial
put her
appointments.
bipartisanly
Nearly a decade of
on
judicial
lower courts.
experience, which
So
is
there were
more than
actually
the combined
Republicans
total
that
of 4
voted
of the
for this
currently
act.
sitting justices at the time
That's
that
my
they were
wife's
nominated. And of course, the life experience as a Black woman, as a working mom, and so much more.
What's she working on?
But it's not just her
Oh, she's
resume and
working on
background that makes
1100.
Judge Jackson so qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. We've all seen over the last 3 days
1100
how she answered
LW.
every
1100
question
LW.
and
Lightweight.
met every unfounded, unfair, and insulting accusation with a level of grace, dignity, and patience that very, very few of us would be able to demonstrate under similar circumstances. And she demonstrated that she's sharp and thoughtful in her responses to legal questions.
She demonstrated
And
that she couldn't
clearly
even
has
define what a
an
woman
understanding
is.
of and a commitment to
Okay.
the rule of law and the principle of equal justice. Now, based
Yeah.
on her background,
Yeah, that's
her
something I thought
experiences,
about the
and
other
her
day. I'm sorry,
qualifications,
Miss
in my
Jackson.
view, Judge
And for
Jackson merits
real.
strong
Yeah,
bipartisan
fuck, man.
support from this committee and from the Senate as a whole. My question is this, and I address it to Congresswoman Beatty and to Mr. Henderson. For those who are concerned about the politicization of the Supreme Court towards one end of the spectrum or the other, what would it say to the country if even someone with Judge Jackson's background, experiences, and qualifications cannot earn bipartisan support from the Senate?
Thank you so much, Senator. I think it would be a sad day in America. As my friend and colleague Wayne Henderson said earlier, when we look at this confirmation and we look at voting rights and when we look at all the things that you are debating today, it is the fundamental grounding of our society and our communities. So I think today, how can you say on both sides of the aisle, as Senator Tillis looked at me and said, he and his colleagues agree that she is exceptionally qualified. Then we have heard about the cases that have been brought before us that have been in question by some of my colleagues on the other side. 10 cases, but it was 5, but they were still within the rule of the law that she was given to deal with. So if you look
Yeah.
at all the charts
Yeah,
that we've seen,
that would be
with
freaking
all the
perfect, bro.
boxes to be checked, more than any other justice that some of the same people here
The
have
only
voted
boxes
for
this
and
chick
confirmed
checks
when questions
is
about cases in the
she's a
same
black
vein have
woman
appeared.
and she is elected.
She still is above all of them. So the answer to that question is,
That's the
how
only
can
boxes
we
she
not?
checks.
And as a Black woman who've lived through civil rights
There we go.
and everything else, let's send the right message. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson.
And again, these
Senator
are all the
Padilla,
people who
your
absolutely
question is so
trashed
powerful,
any
particularly after
black
you
or
restated, as you
Latino
did so eloquently,
conservative.
all of the factors that
They
had
talked
brought
about one of
Judge
the
Jackson
judges
to
the other
this
day
moment.
that
Her background
the
is
Democrats filibustered
absolutely
for 2
extraordinary.
damn years before
And
she
her
actually got onto
demonstration
the
and
DC
mastery
circuit.
of the law is second to none. If someone, an American citizen who has overcome the challenges in one's life that she has overcome, demonstrated her ability beyond any reasonable doubt, and is unable to get the bipartisan support of members of this committee, indeed, it is a sad day for this country. The signal that it sends to the American people is that at the end of the day, preparation may not be the standard by which you are measured, and instead something else, intangible perhaps, in this process.
It's just about her race. But again,
That's
you
not
won't
what we want
acknowledge the
for
Democrats
America.
filibustering
That's not what we in the
black
civil
or
rights
Latino
movement have struggled
conservative judges.
for our professional lives to help bring to this country. It would be a sad day. My hope is that the partisan considerations that may have affected some in the questioning of Judge Jackson will be set aside, and that members of this committee,
Let's look at
out
something
of
real quick.
their love for the country and its people and the future of the court, will do what's right and will make Judge Jackson a unanimously confirmed appointment.
So
Now,
let's look
I'm
at
dreaming. That's not going to happen.
judicial nominations.
But certainly, I think sending a signal to the country that indeed we
And you can look at
recognize
how
the
many
qualifications
freaking
that she brings to
people
the
that
table, and
Biden
we
is putting
lift
on
them
here.
up in the name of the American people is something that I hope we can all do.
District Judge of
Thank you, Senator
Nevada,
Padilla, and thank you to the panel.
New
and
York,
welcome all of you
New York,
to this room, and thank you for your contribution to this historic
Maryland,
occasion.
District of
I said at the outset, and I
Washington,
want to repeat now, my
Northern
gratitude
District
to
of
my ranking
Georgia,
Republican member, Senator
District
Grassley,
Judge,
true
District
gentleman
Judge,
and
District
friend,
Judge,
who believes as I do that this is one of the most important assignments in a Senate career.
55
to be on the
pages
Judiciary Committee at
of
this moment
judges,
in history.
attorney generals,
I believe that the admonition of the leader on the Republican side, Senator McConnell,
is
that our
what
hearing
these
be fair
assholes
and
are
respectful
doing
of the
right now.
nominee,
And
was largely
they are
upheld
nominating all
by the
leftist
members of the committee. And
people
I
who will
hope that
not
we can
follow the
continue in that
Constitution
vein.
whatsoever.
But before we close today, I want to mention those who have helped enable this hearing to run so smoothly. Gratitude starts with the officers of the United States Capitol Police. These officers keep members and staff safe every single day. But this week, we've asked them to take on a greater task. Keep us safe, keep our buildings secure, and ensure that the guests in attendance play by the rules. I can't thank them enough for all the hours they put in toward that mission. I also want to thank the staff from the architect of the Capitol, Senate Sergeant at Arms, Senate Recording Press Galleries, and others who worked so hard to set up this room and give access to the public and press and to keep this hearing running. Finally, a special thanks to the committee staff, designated and otherwise, who have worked tirelessly on behalf of members and staff on both sides of the aisle. I'll have more thanks to offer in the weeks ahead, but again, my deepest gratitude to all who've made this hearing a success. Please note the record will remain open until 5 p.m. next Thursday for the submission of letters, statements for the record, and similar materials. And with that, the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.
All right. So these jackasses are adjourned for the day. And I'm going to bail out. I've got to go run into town. I've got to go help my dad out with some stuff. So take them easy, guys. I will catch you guys on the flip. Be cool.